speaking with, right, in the next few days, everybody is circle so that people are easily accessible. I've not invited speakers who are simply big names, but not accessible to us. Okay, just so you know, that's where we are. And so let's start. Ashit is, of course, one of our oldest mentors and also well known as Radhika's husband. And his company was acquired by Salesforce, and he's one of the key people to know at Salesforce. So Ashit, run with it. Thank you for joining us today. It's a pleasure.
Thanks, Asha. And I'm very much feel honored to be invited here. Rajeev Circle has always curated exceptional fellows. Asha is amazing, both friend as well as very well-known angel investor and even philanthropist in Silicon Valley. So thank you, Asha, for getting started with Rajeev Circle and everything else that you have been doing. And then I'm just looking at the bios of every fellow. I'm amazed. In the entrepreneurial journey, you guys have been way ahead of many or most other entrepreneurs, and in ways and just even the kind of the reason for why you're taking on these journeys, right? And then your focus on positive impact on the society. So thank you. Thanks for spending your 25 minutes next with me. So I have been with about 7-8 startups in my professional career. I've seen successes, few, 1 or 2, and a lot of failures. And so I will walk you through things, and I've learned things. So I'll walk you through some of the things that you may find useful on your journey too. So that's the reason. That's what I'm going to walk through. All right. So here is a question. Okay. Think about this question. An answer, and that's something that to kind of ponder on for you guys. All right. Biases. We all deal with biases. We like it or not. We consciously use them. Subconsciously we apply them. And they sometimes help us because a bias in some ways is an expert opinion. We have trained our mind to reach a conclusion fast. That's a bias. And at the same time, many times they can hinder, especially on the entrepreneurial journey. Good thing, we don't need to memorize this. As entrepreneurs, we are looking for shortcuts. We need to know that there are biases, they exist. There are 70, 80 of them, and we are not here to analyze them all day. What happens with biases? Here is what you see with biases in realizing or looking at your vision. And in execution, you and your teams will be wandering through desert. But then you want right tools so that you are focused on the vision and you reach your destination. All right, so then let's start with the first tool. How do we sharpen the business focus? And many of you may have heard about Lean Launchpad. It allows you in a single nice map view who are your partners, what are your customer segments, what's your value prop, a unique value prop, and how do you kind of prioritize each of them, right? So it's a very well-known tool. It's there are even courses on Udacity about it, and I suggest that you look at that to sharpen and make sure that you don't have a blind spot as you continue on your entrepreneurial journey. All right. Here's how, this is just one example of how it looks like, right? So it covers various things, and you don't need to fill out every detail. You start with some, right? And then you iterate. So another key thing, right? It's not that suddenly we are going to acquire amazing skills that we go and on day one, we have fantastic end-to-end every one of these tools. But you try, right? You say, okay, I'm going to try this thing iteratively, incrementally, apply, see it's useful in your context, and then continue on. But you guys already know all of these things. Otherwise, you guys wouldn't have started. Like I end up sometimes with a lot of thinking about things, analyzing, and not executing enough. And I'm given where you are, you guys are all executing. So thanks, kudos to you. Let's go to the next one. Here is a quote to think about. So what happens here, right? And in my case, the very first time I opened my iPhone and I dropped it. So in my case, no product survives first contact with a customer. But here, the notion is that if you don't understand your customer and understand in a deeper sense your business plan and your product strategy, and everything else can fail. Fortunately, we have tools, so you don't have to have that expensive situation where you spend a lot of time. So to understand your customers, the tool that I know out there is something called design thinking process. Some of its key tenets are about finding emotional drivers that are the challenges facing your customers and how to address those emotional drivers. Because if you don't address those emotional drivers, the customers will likely not use your product or service. And you to know what level of skills your customers have and what kind of affordability your customers have. Like, know it really well. And so the tool design thinking process shows the value of iterating fast and walks you through process of how to get to know your customers from that emotional angle and various angles that otherwise not considered. We all have, when we start businesses, we have a set of hypotheses about the market, about the customers, and we need to validate them. We need to validate them cheaply and fast. And how to make all of that happen, design thinking can help. And I'll give you an example. So there is this very famous experiment. You get 12 spaghetti sticks and a loose string, and you have to build tallest freestanding structure in 5 minutes. And there are 3 teams: elementary school kids, a bunch of MBAs, and a bunch of engineers, five of each, right? Guess which team had the tallest structure? And this is not just one team, across multiple such experiments people have experienced. And so spoiler, all right, punchline. It's the elementary school kids. Why? Because they do not, they simply try to do something. It doesn't stand, it fails. They look at that and say, let me try something. And so they iterate way faster than other two, right? MBAs, they go and say, okay, I will be the lead. I will tell you what to do. And each of them doing that, right? So, and then engineers are pulling out their calculators and their instruments to figure out what's the highest angle they can go. So net, you got to know techniques to iterate as fast as possible and as cheaply as possible so that you can arrive at a solution. And then also know your customers. Okay. Here is an example. So imagine you are a 5-year-old and imagine you have to go for a brain scan and you are put inside this worrying machine. You have to stand still for about 5 minutes. For years, the kids had to do that. And about 90% of kids who had to go through this machine had to be sedated after almost half an hour of trying to pursue them to lie down still in this very scary machine. And the GE designers, they would not do anything about this, but they would improve this operator console and the user interface in that, and they would ask operators, hey, how is this year's user interface? How is there, do you like the improvements and all that stuff, right? Meanwhile, the patients are getting sedated. 1 year, a designer saw the patient being dragged and followed and realized what was going on. And he came up with that. So, oops, what's happening here? Am I the one? Let's go here. Yeah. With this kind of theme, the machine hasn't changed. The overall experience hasn't changed. What has changed is child's imagination has fired up. He or she thinks that they're going on a rocket ship journey, and they have to lie down still to make sure the rocket gets launched. And you will hear the rocket engine going for about 5 minutes, and you would have arrived. Sedation rate went dropped from 95% to almost 90% down. So only 10% of the kids had to be sedated after this, right? But initially, it was almost scrapped by the finance folks because they thought there wasn't sufficient market for it. So that's the value and power of design thinking. So then let's go on to the third tool. So having that fantastic plan, having understanding customer doesn't mean anything, right? Execution has to be there, and execution has to be fast and be able to pivot, because as entrepreneurs, you guys need to sometimes change directions. Now, initially, when you started your journey and you're going here, right? You have orchestration. Here is the founder. You're a bunch of early employees making things happen, but they're all looking at the founder for direction. But then as you are growing more, you have partners, you have larger team, you need to go here. There is no single person here who's conducting anything, and yet things are harmonious, right? So you need a tool for that. So the tool that I know is something called this V2MOM that Mark Benioff, CEO of Salesforce, has been practicing, both internally as well as it's well publicized, so you can find more about it. But idea is that you have every year your well-known vision statement, values, methods, obstacles, and measures. Once you have these, you can make sure that everyone in the team has started from topmost level, and using that, V2MOM created their own to make sure that how they are aligned with the top and how they feed into the top vision, as well as methods. Methods are the things that you need to achieve by year end, and then you start measuring progress around them as you go on. Okay. So this is how you. This is one way, not the only way, but you need to think about this as you start scaling. Okay. So then that takes us to the last one, and here's the challenge, right? How do you know, or how do you kind of make sure that you're not overspending, overthinking, and over-engineering something? Let's take this example, right? There is latest state-of-the-art vaccine with billions spent on making it, and there is cloth mask. Guess which one? This is not even 80-20, right? This is mask is like no cost to develop, and then something like 10 cents to manufacture. Very cheap technology. And guess which one works if applied properly? you guys know the answer. You can see US has about 2,000 deaths per million due to COVID. And Japan, which hasn't had a very strong vaccination program, has 140 deaths per million. One of the lowest in the world, if not the lowest. So that's the thing to keep in mind always during execution, that you don't need to just go for the best engineering, the best thing out there, the most expensive thing out there. Something it's good enough for 80%, go for it. All right. And the tools are starting with design thinking process, also thinking about which are the blockers for your customers. So here is a nice, I would say, a model to think about is that the elephant, which is the emotional state of someone's mind, your customer's mind usually, or even your team's mind. Rider is the analytical aspect, and the path is some steps that they need to take in order to reach a solution. And there are fantastic examples from different parts from this in this book. This is called Switch. Change things when change is hard. I highly recommend that. It gives you some case studies. You can look at that and see if something inspires you, something is applicable in your context. Can be a nice thing. All right. Here is an example of a school, elementary school, preschool in Kenya. And the question is, a lot of kids, there's about 30–40% absenteeism in the school. And you are trying to solve that. You have choices. Perhaps look at this, right? In rain season, this is not the way to study. There could be leaking roof. Perhaps if we build a better school building, it will increase the absenteeism. Perhaps a midday meal will increase attendance. Perhaps a deworming medicine, because sometimes these kids, they get severe tummy ache. And so a deworming medicine would fix this. Guess which is the right answer? And the answer turned out to be deworming medicine. For about 60 cents a year, this thing increased attendance by 25%. So, but that's something that not many would have guessed. Only a very rigorous study ensured that that's what is needed. So this is where you got to kind of step back, take a pause before jumping into a solution, because sometimes a first solution may be, or obvious solution may be more expensive than it's worth, and it may not be as effective. Okay. All right. So I'm going to give you a real world example. How am I doing for the time? Sorry. About 5 minutes, good. So let me go to, all right. So it's a startup that I worked at. I was heading the engineering team. It's in desktop virtualization space, and desktop virtualization, the idea is that a physical Windows desktop, and there are, let's say, tens and hundreds of them in a classroom or in a contact center. When they go down and they crash sometimes, it's challenging. There has to be a Windows admin physically on site who goes and fixes that while the user is waiting, or have spare such hardware that they can replace with, start it up, and still there is at least about 15–20 minutes of downtime while the machine gets swapped. So with desktop virtualization, your desktop, the actual operating system is running somewhere on the server, and you can have very low cost and almost fail-proof things like Chromebooks devices, or cheaper, even cheaper than Chromebook devices, running on along with a monitor, where the users are using those devices. So students are doing their online studies. Contact center agents are calling and taking calls from customers, and so on, right? Or in one case, one of our customers, it's the cop cars. Cops were having screen inside their petrol car, and they were using that as a laptop device with the actual laptop running somewhere in the server. So just the connection to the server side. So anyway, so that's the desktop virtualization space. So how did we sharpen our business focus? So a lot of large companies, and there was already 3 large companies in the desktop virtualization space when Kavisa entered. And as a startup, we said, we don't want to do the same thing as large companies. We want to say that we are not encumbered by existing solutions that large companies had on the server virtualization, which they said, oh, I got this hammer, which is the server virtualization technology, and I'm going to now apply it to a different kind of nail, which is desktop virtualization space. And so our insight was that, hey, desktop virtualization space is different. The users, the customer is different, right? Both the end users and the administrators are very different than server virtualization. So then, based on those ahas, we said, we're going to make sure that per desktop cost, it will be $500 or less, because that's what a physical laptop or desktop would cost, along with Windows licensing. And then first time setup by a desktop administrator for our solution should be 1 hour or less, and without having to acquire any new skill. Right? This is a key thing. With all other solutions, desktop admin would be, in fact, left out of the picture. The server-side administrators will take over. They will say, oh, now we need advanced networking. We need some shared storage, advanced storage, and these are the skills you guys don't have. We need to do it. But they had no clue about how to configure Windows. So there was this knowledge gap on both sides that caused lots of projects to fail and a long time to even get to a pilot. So we had this goal, 1 hour or less. And then third goal was our end user, their experience should not be compromised. So having these 3 explicit goals also helped. And you can see it's reflected from how we kind of knew our various kinds of customers, right? The desktop admins who had Windows administration certification, and they were time strapped. So they couldn't learn new complex skills. Our budget was approved by department heads, not CIOs, right? So that part is, that insight was also useful for us in saying we will do only inbound sales, not field sales. Inbound sales means our sales folks would be making calls. They would not visit customer sites, which is much more expensive, and spend time schmoozing and dining with the CIOs of Fortune 1000 or Fortune 100 or whatever, right? Net, because we were offering things at a low cost, we had to operate at low cost. There has to be alignment between the business strategy and the customers that you are going after. And then finally, our end users, our Windows desktop users, they're used to significant downtime. And they're also used to a very rich and fast user interface interactions when using actual physical desktop. So we need to provide that same interaction. Okay. So then, how did we achieve this highly aligned and loosely coordinated execution? So CEO was always with customers and investors, and there was no product manager. So how do you prioritize things, right? So knowing those three goals helped us have an autonomy in making trade-offs, right? So knowing this and here's the example of how we did that with our architecture, right? So I'll skip that part. I'll spare you the details and go to the last part of this thing. All right. So the problem we encountered was we were having 40% success rate in this getting to the successful setup in 1 hour or less. And that should be cause. There is a utility called sysprep that's needed. So when you receive a Windows CD, or when you download Windows and you install, or when you open up your laptop for the first time, Windows laptop, it starts from something called golden image, and it boots up. And it takes about 5 minutes. But in order to have that image, golden image on your disk or in the CD, it has to be sysprepped. And that sysprep process takes another 5 minutes. So total 10 minutes to create a golden image and then boot up from that. And that process, those 10 minutes, if you did not set some Windows environment variables and activation key for the license correctly, you won't be able to get to an actual desktop booting up correctly. And after 10 minutes of wasted time, you have to restart the whole process, and you don't even know where it went wrong. So it's a very opaque, very time-consuming, and very frustrating process of trying to troubleshoot what went wrong. So what could you do? We had a Web 1.0 UI, very clunky. So let's update that so that our customers, the admins, have a better experience. Perhaps we hire a UX consulting firm and spend some money there to fix that. Perhaps we have a Windows architect or developer to address this right. Or we can remind the administrator to make sure that they have done specific environment variable configured correctly before starting sysprep, right? And I'm sure you guys have guessed it. In the end, we settled for D. Why? Because we were highly cash strapped. We were operating out of a garage. We did not have money for any of this, right? And I spent hours debating with my CEO saying, no, if we go to Web 2.0 style, that's not what admins are saying. And he said, yes, that's true. Anyways, in the end, we just created a checklist of 10 questions that an admin has to answer and make sure it says, have you put activation key inside a certain environment variable? Have you configured that part of domain name service? Have you done this? These are reminders, right? And this is the same thing, by the way. There's this interesting study of how a lot of times in operating theater, surgeons left either some instrument or something inside patient's body till a checklist came along so that they could have an inventory of, okay, have you done this, right? Has assistant or work preparer scrubbed their hands, sanitize their hands before entering the thing? Have you counted before starting the operating procedure, all the instruments? And then have you recounted all the instruments? Write down the numbers, right? So that I'm not saying checklist is solution to everything, but a simple solution like that gets you 80%. So after going with D, our success rate went to almost like 85% within the first try. So that's with that. I'm going to then transition to Radhika. So let me see if she's, and questions while I transition. Any questions that I can answer for you?
Vikas has a question. Vikas?
Sure.
Hi, Ashit. Thanks a lot.
Hi.
One insight I really like the way, or in a very like you are presenting things in a very you have dumbed it down so that it is easier to actually portray a picture like this versus that. But sometimes I think like, let's say, take an example of the deworming related stuff. I'm sure I'm sure a lot of research must have gone into
Yes.
finding that thing, right?
Absolutely. So, it's years right. And sometimes decades that
yes,
we get there. Yeah.
Because sometimes it's in front of us, but we cannot just get it right in this thing. So I was personally thinking like, aren't we like comparing things like to generally like in a very, very light manner, but actually behind the scene it's a lot, because specifically for this deworming, Indian government also gave this deworming syrup to the government kids. I know that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was just saying like it seems like Hindi में बोलते हैं कि घटना घटित होने के बाद हम शायद ज्यादा समझदार हो जा रहे हैं. तो same goes for that.
लेकिन घटना,
yeah please,
लेकिन घटना जहां पे घटी वहां पे कॉन्टेक्स्ट अलग था. आप यहाँ पे अप्लाई कर रहे, ये एप्लीकेबल है कि नहीं वो भी पूछना पड़ता है ना.
Yes, that's a smart question that you have to ask. Yes,
right. So as Buddha said, do not take what I say as a given, apply your own judgment, right? Each context is different. So my aim is to kind of say, hey, these are the possibilities. These are not panacea. But if you have to apply them in a more methodical manner so that you are making that decision with fewer blind spots, because I'll go back to this earlier tenet that we always operate with biases, whether we like them or not, whether we are aware of them or not. And we want to make sure that sometimes it's called intuition, sometimes it's called bias, but both our intuition is right and both we are not getting blinded by biases, right?
Yes, and one more point about that business model canvas. I also get to know about like when I was like almost a year down in my journey. I never knew there is something called BMC exists, which actually is like a filter for your idea. That was pretty cool. Yeah,
it's a filter. It doesn't have to be, right? All I'm saying is that here's a tool, and you don't have to kind of say like, oh, if I haven't done all of it rigorously, it's no, I'm in trouble. No, but knowing it and just applying it very quickly, at least it's a start, and then you can kind of iterate on that. Right? You learn more as you practice, and then you go again, right? So apply the iteration. Iteration works best, right? Even today, right? When in a large company like Salesforce, with my teams, when they start showing amazing Visio diagrams of flow diagrams of UML and stuff like that, I said, no, why didn't you? I just want to see a pencil and paper, or pen and paper drawings, initially sketches of sequence diagrams and class diagrams in UML. Why? The few less effort you have spent in getting something, a prototype done, the faster, the less attachment you have to that solution, and the faster you can iterate, right? Because a lot of times people come to the table and wedded to the solution they have, rather than saying, is it really solving customer problem? And the more effort, the more energy that they have spent, the more wedded they get to the solution. And there is this very famous case of in Levi Strauss history. They were saying in 70s, one of the kind of the heir to Levi, who had done an MBA from Harvard, wanted to start a signature line of pants. And everything was done in a way where they completely ignored some of the customer input, and then took customer input way longer, way late in the game. And then they launched. So multi-million dollar, multi-year initiative utterly failed, consequently. So yeah, so the sooner you can iterate, the cheaper, the better off you are. Radhika, you are there?
Yeah, I've been here a while ago.
Okay, right. On to you.
Okay. Well, I'm happy to be here and looking forward to meeting you all in person soon. Chandni, I sent you a question. How much time do I have? So I can adjust accordingly. I know we went back and forth on the time.
Yeah, the next speaker arrives in about 30 minutes.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Chandni, the next speaker am I audible?
You are cutting out, Chandni. Can you type in the chat box? I can't hear what you're saying. I just want to know how much time so I can go accordingly. Hi, Asha. Hello, everyone. Good morning from California. I'll just get started in a second. I just want to adjust for respect the time for the next speaker. And we had Ashad go for longer because I'm not a morning person, so he's much more coherent in the mornings. But we are all now part of Asha's extended family, so we'll have plenty of chances to connect and chat more than you want to.
Yeah. Hey, welcome, Radhika. Good morning. Hey, Chandni, what time is Mishi's talk?
In next 20 minutes.
20.
Okay.
So that's good for me to know.
And just quick intro to Radhika, just so you all know, she's been with me from get-go, from the day that we started Rajeev Circle, then we started Rajeev Circle Fellowship. And in fact, Radhika was early, one of the first 5-6 people that was part of the Rajeev Circle, which was a Bay Area group. And then we founded the fellowship. And she's been with us all throughout, So every year when the fellows come, they either meet me or Radhika and Ashit, and they know that we are available. We are one phone call away. So I really want you to get to know Radhika, even though we have a short time today, but we'll get together again, Radhika. It's, this is a long journey. So, So please start.
Absolutely. And thank you again, Asha, for inviting us, but above all, this fellowship, special fellowship for launching it. It's something unique. I have not seen. I'm a community builder involved in many things, building bridges across the world here in Silicon Valley with India, but I've never seen anything like this fellowship. So I want to congratulate you all. And also this bridge building between two countries, people from Pakistan and India. It's so powerful. And the way Asha is doing it, she has almost innate instinct for people who come together as a powerful family, but also go ahead and change the world in powerful ways. So thank you, Asha, for continuing launching the fellowship and continuing this. What a beautiful way of continuing Rajeev's memory. So I am Radhika Shah, and I am going to present a few slides. I'm going to quickly try and screen share. Like Asha, I am also from Ahmedabad. I grew up in the backdrop of the Gandhi ashram, very influenced by Gandhian philosophy and by a father who worked for the United Nations. So very much a believer in the UN as well. I am trying to find screen share. There we go. Oops. Can you guys see my presentation?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, in full screen mode, right?
No, yeah, now it's
perfect. So I will just quickly start a little bit. Started off with my life journey a bit. Asha wanted me to share a bit of that. So grew up all over India and in the interior of Southeast Asia, Myanmar, Laos, and such, which for me at a very early age made me realize how similar we are, even though we are different at the surface. And curious about human nature. And that is something that continues with me. I also fell in love with technology. My scientist father gave me a microscope before I got my first doll. And that love for technology that I share with Asha and many others has stayed. And also how to apply the technology as a tool for helping society is something that I am these days very involved in. And I will jump into, I'm going to shrink sharing my journey in the spirit of, I want to share a bit about the groups I'm involved with now. The next time we meet, we will all do a lot more about who we are and where we come from. But again, congratulations. And I wear a few hats right now. One of them is co-president of Stanford Angels and Entrepreneurs. Stanford Angels and Entrepreneurs is a community of 2,000 plus members from Stanford, brilliant faculty, as well as business school, computer science, as well as alumni from all over the world and students. And we've all come together to advance tech innovation and entrepreneurship. Similar to the group Rajeev Circle Asha mentioned, where that one, when we started, it was a mentoring group, and it was amazing with Asha nurturing that community, 500 industry and Silicon Valley brilliant minds, and it still continues to help each other mentor and continue Rajiv's spirit of forward.
Excuse me, Radhika ji. I'm sorry to interject. Actually, I think your I don't know whether it's microphone or what, but it is brushing against your either like near to some. Yeah.
I put the paper away. Sorry about that. Is it better
Thanks
now?
a lot. Yes, perfect. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for pointing that out with us. Yeah. And so that is one part of my world. I am a tech impact investor and also limited partner at a few funds here, including one on tackling bias in the investor ecosystem. That's something I'm very passionate about. And at Stanford Angels and Entrepreneurs, we bring together people from the tech innovation world, and we're looking to advance the field of entrepreneurship, tech innovation investment is within the Stanford Alumni Association. I also wear a couple of other Stanford hats. One is as a fellow, and I chair the tech advisory group for the Human Rights Center at Stanford. And there we look at human rights more holistically, including kind of legal system reform, working from within. It's not an activist group, it's more from within systems, how to have a better rule of law and justice. And then I'm very passionate about gender equality. I was very influenced by my grandfather early on in my life. And he was a staunch Gandhian and a huge supporter of reforming things to empower women and the vulnerable in society. And as a governor of Tamil Nadu, he brought huge change in that area. And that I've been influenced from childhood. And now I am excited to be a senior advisor at a newly launched Global Center for Gender Equality at Stanford, a group that hopes to do more things around the world very soon. And finally, I wanted to touch on my global bridge building. It's an organization called the Sustainable Development Goals Philanthropy Platform, which was launched when the United Nations ratified the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. You might know them, very ambitious goals to tackle the greatest challenges of our times. And this one was launched by the United Nations Development Program, UNDP, and the Rockefeller Philanthropy Advisors, and a few other foundations. And now Wings, a global philanthropy space organization, is a convener and organizer. And here we look to build bridges at a catalytic level between governments, UN, philanthropy, businesses in country. We are launched in 8 countries. And in this moment, I think that work is so important. So I'm very excited about that, the global aspect as well. And it was really inspiring, Asha, to see every year I see in the RC Fellowship more and more people, fellows working on societal change, the young entrepreneur working on kind of helping those who can't hear. I really am keen to hear more about that as well, and of all of you, but we need so many more solutions like that if we are to achieve these 17 goals. These goals, as you know, weave together social, economic, and environmental challenges and solutions, and the spirit of leaving no one behind, which to me personally really resonates with the Gandhian philosophy of respecting the dignity of all and our relationship to that of nature as that of a trustee, a custodian of sorts. And no time is it more important than now, because just recently the UN shared the climate report, IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel report, and it is code red. It's a code red crisis for humanity right now on climate. And if we don't tackle it, nothing else will matter. And COVID has shown how interconnected we all are with ourselves, with each other, with the planet. And we have to work rapidly to achieve these goals, and we cannot do it incrementally. Technology is what is needed, in my opinion, because a change needs to be rapid and transformative. And as we all know, tech enables that, whether it's public health, growing inequality, climate crisis, helping people with disabilities. And the tech enables non-linear, very rapid scaling. But it also creates unique challenges if we are not careful how we use it. And particularly tech innovation in the hands of passionate entrepreneurs, change makers like you all, combined with this global normative SDG framework, offers an unprecedented opportunity for very catalytic transformation needed in this moment. This is what I'm excited about. And since Asha shared some frameworks, I'm going to share a couple of examples from my world that inspire me. One of them is Blue River Technologies. It was one of my early investments and Stanford Angels' early investments. At Stanford in the ecosystem here, we often have students working with professors. Asha's late husband, Professor Rajeev Motwani, as you all know, was in fact very catalytic in Google getting launched. I think a lot of the early brainstorming happened in their living room. And so that kind of set a bar. And so a lot of this happens now. And so professors come together with the PhD students often, and companies get launched, spinning out research innovation happening at Stanford. And Blue River Technologies similarly was Stanford students, alumni from computer science business school came together. They had big visions. They wanted to transform agriculture by using the most cutting edge computer vision and robotics. And people didn't believe in them. They said, what do you know about this? And you guys are crazy, you're looking at moonshots. But we were very excited about the passion of these entrepreneurs and the power of the technology. And so we were among the early funders. Then we know Khosla came in later. But what they do is they build these really low cost robots, which actually with computer vision and AI, they can recognize weeds and then they can automate weeding and crop thinning and such. So they bring down the cost heavily. They actually bring down backbreaking work, which is often done by vulnerable segments, including women. Now they're freed up for other kind of work. But also they really decrease herbicide and pesticide use, which is really transformative. It's really transformed the agri industry in the US. And so much so that the two big players in the industry were fighting to acquire them. And they were acquired by John Deere for over 300 million. And we don't have time, but that link, there's a powerful video of how this robot works. You guys could check out if interested. But what I love is these guys were a very big exit. And people say, can you do positive change in society and make money? Absolutely, you can. And many of my investments have been that way. So I'm very excited to see many of you addressing such challenges. A few questions to ponder on. Can we use technology to build bridges rather than divides? How can we democratize access to technology? That's going to be key. And how can we use it to provide health, shelter, education, food, and work? Some quick touching on a couple of quick examples is with AI. AI is so transformative in this moment. One of Stanford professors, Andrew Ng, has been working on bringing the power of AI with the students again on auto-diagnostics of lung disease now with an X-ray. With a photo of an X-ray, they could almost diagnose at same or even better level almost than doctors of whether there is a lung disease or not. And this is game-changing in places like Africa where there's not enough doctors. And this is the kind of innovation we need. Then the self-driving cars that can help the elderly and disabled. The disabled are being so left behind and the elderly, and that's why I was so happy to see the Young Entrepreneurs solution. I am also on the advisory board of an NGO called Benetech here in Palo Alto, Silicon Valley, which is looking to bring the power of technology to help the vulnerable disabled women. So some of you, if there's interest, we can of course make those connections later. Tech, I want to touch on an example that is bringing the power of the most cutting edge distributed artificial intelligence to help the elderly live safely in their own homes. Another one of my investments, but also Stanford Angels company, started by some of the most brilliant faculty in Stanford, Professor David Chariton, Professor Ken Berman from Cornell, are all very deeply involved in this startup, which was started by an Indian guy, Ashutosh Saxena, who left his professorship at Cornell, a Stanford graduate as well, because he felt this calling to bring the power of AI to help people live safely in their homes comfortably. And now this startup, Casper.ai, is helping the elderly live safe lives. It is a sort of very cool digital butler, which it senses what the people like, and then context-sensitive automation. So once it knows when they want their coffee, how much light they like, it opens the blinds. Not just that, it detects falls and alerts people. It also provides emotional support. It reminds them to take medicines, exercise routines. It is game-changing, especially in this post-pandemic era where in places like America, the nursing homes are very unsafe. People are dying, being infected by each other. And this is going to be game-changing. And this is an example of inclusive AI, where we are not leaving any segment behind. And it also is also poised to be very successful because it enables remote property management and cost saving by using less electricity. And then I want to pose some questions for you all to think about. Can we leverage data science and tech to create more voice and agency for every human being, for disaster relief, for creating more jobs, and even matching people on more jobs? The country of Kenya, where I'm involved as an advisor with the UN and the IT part of the government, they are looking at bringing the power of tech for matching job creation for the youth, and job finding is a major challenge there. It could be used to bring transparency in governments, giving voice and agency. One of Asha's friends, actually one of Professor Rajev's students, I forgot that, Ashish Goel, has started a Stanford online participatory decision-making platform, which enables now the cities are using for budgeting, where every citizen can have a voice at a micro decision level and participate in a decision. There is so many things happening, and yet I think we're at the cusp of what can be. Visa, the company Visa, again, there is a brilliant Indian head of data there, a senior vice president, who is bringing the power of technology so that when there's a disaster, then by looking at credit card usage, now they can inform the help givers that which gas stations are open, what are the exit routes. So there's so much that can happen. And I will skip this one, but another sadly passed away. One of my and Asha's mentees, Leila Jannah, amazing trailblazer out of Harvard. She, at some source, brought the power of technology to provide livelihood to women, vulnerable women, from their homes in places where women can't, because of cultural and social norms, leave the home. They could work from home and earn a lot of money doing things like, for AI, there's training set and data needed to help create the data, and bringing jobs from places like Silicon Valley, big companies, universities, to these women at their homes. And this company transformed their lives. Now that these women were earning more than the other members, and it changed how the male members in the family viewed them. And these are the kind of transformations needed and happening. Then Chandni, let me know if I'm on time, okay? Because I'm not tracking time now. Anonymity of,
We do have
how many? Okay.
7 minutes.
7 minutes. Perfect. The anonymity of the internet is one I want to touch on. We can convert the things that are currently liabilities into assets. The anonymity of the internet is currently being leveraged by social media. I wouldn't say social media platforms, people using social media.
It's okay, don't worry. Biru?
And they are using that to for human trafficking, for animal poaching. And because they can do the transactions anonymously, now animal poaching has gone through the roof, like multiple, like order of magnitude increase in these things. People leveraging the anonymity of the internet. That has to, it's a very sad situation. And yet a company in India started by a young entrepreneur is leveraging that same anonymity to provide mental health where it is a taboo. People don't go for mental health help, and yet so needed in COVID situation. All of us have severe mental health problems, right? And the need is high. And she provides anonymity. You can meet your therapist without them knowing who you are, or and yet you could have ongoing sessions by using an avatar. We need more solutions like that. Similarly, the amplifying power of social media is often being used for misinformation, hate, xenophobia. It could be converted for pluralistic messaging, for helping build bridges, and who better than young people like you to make that happen? We talked of biases. AI can amplify biases if you're not careful, but we could use the same AI to, if we had the right data set and we worked on removing the biases, or rather we worked on objective data set, we could eliminate biases. And this is something one of Professor Rajev's, I think Jeff Ullman was his advisor, right, Asha? Big believer in Rajeev. Professor Ullman is one of the top minds in computer science at Stanford. These were all part of like Rajeev Asha community, but he often talks about, it's not that the tech is bad, people misunderstand, it's just the data set, get it objective, make sure you have an unbiased data set, and the algorithm will learn from that, and you will eliminate biases. As we wrap up, I just want to leave you guys with some things again to think about. Who is responsible, accountable for these unintended side effects? It is tech developers, designers, tech entrepreneurs, investors, governments, large corporates, everybody. Each of us has a role, and we need to think much more responsibly about this. And we have to all collaborate together. Also, I think governments and policymakers are making tech decisions in isolation, and they need a lot more participation from people like yourselves to inform the policy, in my opinion. And so final few takeaways. Intentionality, those of you who are leveraging tech, intentionality is critical to ensure that the technology we're building has positive effect. And one of my learnings has been diversity in demographics in teams, as well as diversity in thought, is critical to designing great solutions, and we challenge each other. Solutions, as we talked, are reflecting of the data. And so look at any data you use. Is it the right data? Is it unbiased? But also, is it the right kind of data? Does it have the right context? Impact does not have to mean foregoing profits. You could be extremely financially successful. So as we wrap up in this code red for humanity, let's embrace the SDG framework as a North Star. It is the moment for all of us to come together and achieve these. It is an existential crisis in everything we do. That's at least what I believe. I embrace it in almost everything I do in this moment. And with entrepreneurs like yourselves, leveraging tech to build inclusive solutions, nothing is impossible. We can recreate a very different world in a post-pandemic world. With that, I'll wrap up. I don't know if you have time for questions, Chandni.
We do have a couple of minutes.
Okay.
Maybe we can take 1 or 2 questions, fellows.
Okay. Any questions? Comments, also welcome comments. I think there's a moment where we all learn from each other. So if you have something to share, if you differ with some of these, absolutely diversity is important. You want to challenge anything on there? No?
You can go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Radhika ji, this has been amazing to listen to you. I have so many ideas and thoughts flowing through me right now. I would be quick about one critical question because it's something I'm working on right now. So the angel groups that you mentioned at Stanford, do they also invest in preliminary rounds to fund technologies emerging from Stanford? And I would like to also connect with you offline, because this is something we are, sorry, I forgot to introduce myself. I am a postdoc at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, and we are a part of the Rockefeller University Circle. So when Harvard launched their fund, of course, we were jealous and we wanted to launch our own. That's the only time we woke up. So,
and Nimi is in New York, by the way.
Oh, yeah, sorry. It's in New York. So we wanted to structure it and convince the couple of people who will run the entrepreneurship lab. They wanted to convince the higher authority to do that. And I would like to connect with you offline to understand how you structured it and how do you fund how many, basically understand the structure of it. If there's a way to connect with you later.
Yeah, I'm happy to. Maybe Yumi and Asha could
in fact,
convene us to a call.
In fact, I'm thinking, Nimi, this is such an important question because a lot of you could set up something like this in your own university.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking it may be a good idea to have Radhika back again for a more in-depth Q&A, because today we have, Radhika, just we are a little bit restricted on time.
Of course, yeah.
But I think in the next few days, you could come back again. And I'm sure others might also find this really valuable,
Yeah, and I can talk a bit more about how Stanford Angels is structured. Absolutely do early stage investment, but there's also, it might even be better, the SDG Philanthropy platform. I'm connected to many foundations, and depending on what kind of work it is, there might be possibility of bringing in foundations. And also, we just did a talk on climate with Dipali Khanna, MD of Rockefeller Foundation, on climate. And so that, as Asha, exactly what you said, Asha, this is a moment to think, can we bring in some of the foundations into nurturing things in universities as well? So happy to do an in-depth collective brainstorming on this. And
actually, that would be great, Radhika. In fact, that could be an entire initiative, right, Radhika?
Yeah.
Whereby it's not just, since there is already an existing group like SAE and few others. I think Harvard has a nice one also.
Yeah,
it's actually quite nice to have a foundation that we can have that foundations actually that can be part of this. Yeah, why not?
And so we can bring
Nimi, the SAE is basically it's not a formal group. It's a group of people that Radhika has put together, where there are multiple angels who are coming out of Stanford, and they've been around for a long time. And I think the startups, Radhika, are you partnered with Basis or something like that?
We work very closely with Basis. So I just wanted to clarify one thing, Asha. I didn't start Stanford Angels. So I just wanted to, I have been so long that many people, it feels that way. I've been co-president for so long. One of my colleagues,
it was Miriam. Sorry,
Miriam Rivera started it. But
correct.
Exactly as Asha says, it's not a fund, Animi. And since we're under a university, we can't even have a fund. It's a community where it started by alumni investing in student startups. And now we also invest in other tech innovations, but it's more than the investing. It's more about also thought leadership and bringing together and building connections and bridges. Stanford community, but now I'm really also building bridges with the outside world. I'm leading some of that work on bringing positive change in society. So and Harvard Angels, Asha, I know them well as well. And so I like the idea, and particularly Wings might be interesting in this. Wings is an international group, building, Benjamin, bringing foundations from around the world, and they want to transform philanthropy and make it more inclusive. And so depending on what it is, I don't understand well enough what you're working on, Amy. And so maybe once we all understand a bit more about what both groups are doing and what is it that your vision is for this. And we could, if need be, pull in Deepali after we brainstorm a bit. She's really amazing, the MD of Rockefeller Foundation Asia. And then we could maybe ideate. And this is what I love about the Rajeev Circle Fellowship, that amazing new things get catalyzed by just the brainstorming as it's starting here. But I will.
In fact, there are whole new initiatives, Radhika. What's happening is, look, the talent is fantastic in Rajeev Circle plus our extended networks. And it is, and the IIT network, the Pan IIT network. There's just incredible talent. I think what needs to happen is there are these for the new initiatives, what we need to have is dedicated people. Otherwise, they are fantastic stories, but then they won't get to the next step. But I think, Radhika, as far as Nimi goes, let me have her speak to you first.
Perfect.
And then we go from there. Chandi is our friend.
Yes, Mishi has joined.
Mishi here.
Yes, she's joined. Hi, Mishi.
Okay. So Radhika, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you
Hi,
so
Mishi.
much.
Hi, Asha. How's it going?
Hey, Mishi, Miss Pink, pretty in pink. Are you actually wearing a crown?
No, I have such bad hair days, so I've put my hair in a headband. But yeah, I'll take a crown.
You can never have a bad hair day, Mishi. What are you talking about? You look wonderful.
You are so generous with me and so kind. But I'll take a crown as well.
But the crown is good. Crown is good. You need a crown. Somebody like yourself ought to be wearing a crown, And Mishi, are you in Delhi right now?
Yes, I am. I fly back next week.
Okay. All right. Mishi,
will you be still in New York?
I am back in San Francisco now.
Oh,
and
okay.
Should be back in New York in a couple of weeks. But Mishi, first of all, I missed you when I was in New York. I can't believe you were not there because I wanted so much to talk to you about a bunch of stuff. But I will. I think in the next few days, I'll call you and we can catch up on a bunch of stuff. But Mishi, our fellowship this is in the 8th year, I think, or 9th year. I'm forgetting now. But we have over 200 or so fellows now. That with actually the goal that with which I started the fellowship was actually to kind of bring in enterprising, really enterprising, very entrepreneurial young people from India who are already making a difference in their own community, but are not the usual suspects. You know what I mean? There are many people who would be like, let's say, with Ashoka Foundation, Ashoka Fellowship, or TED Fellows. Those are folks who have already got, multiple UN grants and this and that. So they're much more I would say, advanced and mature in their work. A lot of our fellows are people that we are, digging in and finding out, and and finding them and seeing how to accelerate them by actually plugging them into the valley where we feel there's so much going on in tech that it can really accelerate them faster. And I think that could have fantastic ripple effects in India. And that's sort of the reigning ethos of starting this fellowship. And just to the fellows, I want to say that when I ran into Mishi's work in New York, I was just blown away by how powerful this work has already been and will be going forward in removing obstacles and unnecessary regulatory barriers to growth in India. So, Mishi, please go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your journey in how you created this Internet Freedom Foundation, why you created it, and what you guys are working on right now.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Asha, for all the generous comments. Thank you, Chandni, for putting this together. And hello to everyone. If you're all joining from India, then you're all on my time zone, and the others, wherever you are. Good evening or good morning, and thank you for sparing your time and listening to me. I will say to Asha that I am not Internet Freedom Foundation. They're the competitors, if anything, but you always have collaborators. You know how it is that somebody else creates the market, but I'm the Software Freedom Law Center. But Asha is, of course, fantastic in so many ways. So I have to say, the first thing, if I can ever tell you anything about my own journey or the clients I represent, I am a lawyer. I have a law practice in New York. Most of my clients, actually all of my clients, are technology companies, starting from the very popular free and open source software projects. And I'm sure you're tech entrepreneurs and you're familiar with open source technology. If you're not, you should be using that raw material, but it's just impossible to do anything on the internet if you aren't familiar with open source. So most of the world's leading software projects have been my clients, from small companies to the large. Big names, small names have all been either my clients or I've consulted with them. And that's my everyday life. I will say that because this fellowship is such an important part of what Asha's futuristic thinking is, and my interest in the country of my birth is so much. I can offer not free or pro bono legal advice, but I will definitely offer some kind of assistance, and not New York prices for a lawyer. But the thing which Asha is referring to, and I'll talk more about that, is 12 years ago, I saw a very robust ecosystem in the United States, which talked about policy issues that included removal of obstacles, as Asha said, from the paths of entrepreneurs, but also to talk about civil society and public. And I thought that in the US, there were a lot of organizations which were doing this work. There was the Electronic Frontier Foundation, there was the Center for Democracy and Technology, and there are plenty of the others. You can look them up. And there were none in India. And at that time, in 2009, one of my friends was starting an academic research organization. But as you will hear in what I speak, I'm not very academic and I'm not very smart, but I am a lawyer. I know courts and I know law and I know policy, and I also understand the government's different forms. So what I decided to do was start a legal services policy organization which works on law, tech, and policy. So simple issues like taxation, which you will all be, when you are too big, then you will be hit by, or other matters such as, because if you are hosting any kind of content and there are regulatory burdens which are then imposed on you without having much regard either for the business model or for the rights of the people whose data you collect and perhaps process. Those are the kind of issues we do work on. Also in India, one of the major issues, and I'm sure you are all from India, then you're familiar with the fact, is that in contrast to the United States, where damages, so you and I enter into a contract, or if there's another issue, then most of the things are dealt with money. But in India, what we try to do is introduce the policemen in the middle. So the government writes laws also in a certain way that even a CEO of a company can be held liable. That's why you saw, I'm sure you've followed it, you've seen there's been a tiff between Facebook and the government, Twitter and the government, and the government trying to say, or arm twist Twitter into saying, you must remove certain content, otherwise we are sending police to your offices. An approach which is not very business conducive. And it also creates a lot of unpredictability amongst the citizens as users of all these products. So my organization in India has now been in existence, does work. It's called the Software Freedom Law Center India. And freedom is mostly about if you cannot control technology and technology controls you, then you have no freedom. And that is about freedom to make any kind of code, which is the open source philosophy, but it is also the freedom about deciding to build products, to offer products, and also use products in a way that don't trample on your rights. So we work with a lot of companies on various matters of free speech and expression, privacy, content moderation, algorithms, etc. Throw in all the buzzwords, and those form most of my work life. These days it is cryptocurrencies, blockchain, AI, cloud. A while ago it was different. In India, some of our marquee projects are internet shutdowns. For those of you who may not be familiar, India is the internet shutdowns capital of the world. India has shut down internet 542 times since 2012. Despite being cases and a lot of public brouhaha, India continues to do that, which is not very good either for education or for business in a lot of ways. Similarly, India does not have a clear privacy law. So whether you're operating a fintech business or you are operating any other business where you want to understand, collect data, whether it's pseudonymized or anonymized data, there are no clear rules about this. One of the things, I don't know how many of you did see the Avengers film. I like it. I hope some of you also like it. If there were polls here, which we are not running right now, but my favorite Avenger is Tony Stark or the Iron Man. If you see, Iron Man in that film creates Ultron. Ultron is an artificial intelligence defense system which is tasked with protecting Earth. But what happens is that Ultron interprets the task which is given to it very literally and concludes that's the best way to save Earth is to destroy all humans. And in many ways, when I saw that, I thought that Ultron is behaving like a typical algorithm. It does exactly what it's told and then ignores any other consideration that might be there. So we get into trouble when we don't manage algorithms very, very carefully. And I'm sure you've all seen that the social media sites also are swamped with clickbait. They fall into the same trap. Which is maximize quality as measured by clicks and not maximize clicks even at the expense of quality kind of a thing. And so an algorithm, the problem when we are creating is we think they're just going to behave like any other employee we are going to have. That's not how algorithms work. And they are the black boxes, and they are perhaps going to run a ton of your businesses right now. So we try to bring that kind of a thinking and a conscious thinking when you're trying to build businesses. The next few minutes that I will use, I wanted to talk a little bit about where I see, having spent so much time amongst businesses, new ones, small ones, in the Valley where most of my paying clients are, in India where most of my altruistic work lies in that sense. But what I wanted to see is that I see a very clear vision of how policy is working through various countries, whether it's the United States, the European Union, or the authoritarian countries like China, Iran, Russia on one side, and then India, or perhaps the global South, where majority of the world lives today. Where is our opportunity? which is a big picture thing. And then I wanted to talk to you a little bit about very simple things in terms of human behavior and human nature that I find it very helpful to be conscious of when I'm building something or when I'm leading teams of people. So feel free to stop me if it's not interesting, and we could just get into some questions. Or if there are more questions you might have, I'm happy to answer those as well. But mostly what I have been seeing is that billions of people these days provide data about their personal lives, about their business activities to a lot of companies. Now, world's major societies, if you have read the paper or followed Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, some of which were not available 2 days ago to you, the world's major societies are now wrestling with the enormous social power, which is wielded by the internet's platform companies. And these companies have created enormously useful products, and our lives have come to depend on us. Those products are useful, they are great. It's just that how the delivery and the infrastructure right now is that perhaps needs to change a little. In Europe, they speak of GAFA. I'm sure you're all aware: Google, Apple, Facebook, Amazon, Twitter, Uber, and other aspirant companies hover just around that ring of GAFA. Now, because there's so much of the data which is handed over to these companies, they use that data as leverage to change human behavior to their economic advantage. Those of you who are building their own algorithms and have an AI first approach or digital first approach, you also understand the flywheel effect and the virtuous cycle of collecting that data, building data lakes, and what you will get out of those. So the governments everywhere, now, when we talk about governments everywhere now see these companies as rivals to their power and also invaluable allies. Because before these companies came in, whether it was the ability to speak or various other fora, were controlled mostly by the governments. That's no longer true, neither in terms of monetary power nor in terms of the kind of influence they can have about how you and I engage with the social contract. Now, India and its government also faces an immense challenge, but they also have an extraordinary opportunity if our policy can lead India in the right direction. And it's a big if, because the talent is so immense in India. It's the only country where if you go to Bangalore or if you go to Hyderabad on tree trunks, you can see a Python or a PHP guy available or a data scientist being advertised. That doesn't even happen in San Francisco or Palo Alto, but it does happen in Bangalore or Hyderabad for that matter. So the talent is already there. We did miss the products bus for sure, but we know that for every Twitter, if a coup had come earlier, maybe things would have looked different. I am not a person who likes protectionism to hold, because I do believe that the talent is such. Look at what Asha and Rajeev did. That talent is capable of creating global products. That's why I see there are three basic approaches which the American data miners are right now looking at. First, the US government sees them as pillars of post-industrial American power. These companies are an immense national security intelligence resource. That's why US government and they are strategic allies. Second, there are many countries which are proponents of digital sovereignties. These are mostly autocracies, and they have chosen to build national search engines and social media structures. And those favor private markets. If you've heard about Ant Financial, if you've heard about WeChat, Yandex, etc., these are all very, very locally focused. They will never be able to go to the global market, and they favor only the domestic private market entrants. How do they do that? Because the governments are exercising control over national communications network, and they block out the US companies. US companies can't enter. And the third is the European Union. The European Union attempts to control these American companies by regulation and litigation, because Europe has open and democratic societies. And they've also been fully colonized, if I would say, by the platform companies, as the United States has been. But Europe does have very robust judicial systems. India cannot claim to have that. Unfortunately, our Supreme Court does not even act in time for very important matters, let alone technology matters. I still argue there, but it's not that effective. And sometimes I would also say is that even in matters of life and death, our timing with our judicial system is not as efficient as it should have been. Now, just going back to the European part is that the plurality of the email which is read by Google, or family lives which are surveilled by Facebook, etc., that causes the European Commission and the governments to regulate the companies. Sometimes they come up with laws like GDPR, but all of them assume that profiting by collecting information about customers and their behavior is essentially legitimate. Nobody has ever said, oh, you know what, this is not the right business model, we must change the business model in a different way. All they've said is, let's require a level playing field for local European companies, and then we should have everything to be opt-in clocks. So that every time the citizen opts in. It's a good thing, but it's only going to be incremental. So these are very narrow neoliberal goals, I would say. And this means undertaking vastly expensive and complex litigation. So even if India gets that thing, I'm not so sure about the enforcement on 1.25 billion citizens. You've all seen the data breaches which happened with MobiQuick. You saw other major data breaches happening in India. And India's computer emergency response team's answer to a litigation filed against them was, well, don't tell us how to do our jobs. We know what to do. I don't know how many of you have ever received any information about if your data was actually hacked, or if you were trying to do something with cryptocurrencies. India doesn't even want to make up their mind whether they want to allow that trading, they don't want to allow that trading. And instead of thinking about blockchain as an ecosystem, we are still stuck on Bitcoin. And oh my God, I don't understand that. And it's not fiat currency, so we perhaps should just shut it down. Then what happens is that either they go in that direction, or they think that they can solve the pandemic with Arogya Setu and COVID. So it's like, it's never a clear vision. An app is not going to solve your pandemic. It can facilitate certain things. So India, but still, I would say, because I'm an optimist and I do believe in the country, I think we have a golden opportunity to find a fourth way. There is US, which, because it likes these companies, will do all the performative politics. There will be Senate hearings, there'll be one, this, that, but we've not seen any legislation come up. The Europeans will litigate, some companies will come out, but there's no global level competition. Then the Chinese, Russia, they will never allow us, so let's forget them. And here we are. We can find the fourth way, because the market in internet services, that is information technology for use of people, for use by people in their daily lives, what you and I want, is now dominated by companies that provide free services in return for massive privacy invasion. You all saw when Deepika Padukone's WhatsApp messages were out in public, you all got scared that whose messages are there. When Pegasus is there, then everybody's wondering, if tomorrow, if I am successful, am I also being watched? And so everybody, all of us, like WhatsApp. I love it. I would never be in touch with my parents. I'm out of all bad family groups which have forwards or bad politics you don't want to fight about. But we all do like the product. We like the fact that it's easy. It's not so expensive to do a video call. I don't have to pay anything basically. And I can use all of it. But what I don't like is this fear, this thing about that I am being sold in a way, a dossier is kept on me, which might be turned to against me in whatever way people like. This model in which the consumer is the product, that is doing enormous harm to the human race and destroying our privacy environment completely, in order to provide people supposedly free email and other forms of social communication, calendars, this, that, all services in cloud. Many of you are technologists. You know how simple this is to put together actually. So an autocratic digital sovereignty like China or Russia cannot be India's way. No matter how much envy we have from our neighbors across the borders, we, more than any other society, stand to benefit economically from the open World Wide Net. We would be much better off when we are plugged in into global markets. Exactly the point of the fellowship, as Asha said, here are people who are so talented in India. I want to plug them where the world is moving fast. Here is Silicon Valley. So any kind of protectionism which takes us out of how Goldman Sachs is doing something, or the big companies, how Square is doing, Coinbase is doing something, that's not going to serve us. Most of the people, this time I'm in India for the last few weeks to see my family after 2 years. But I have to say, so many of the people I meet, most of them are much younger than I am because they know better than I do. And I just want to learn from them all the time. But they're so well aware, whether it is popular culture or it is about economics or it is about politics, of everywhere in the world, because there is a big fountain to drink from and everybody's taking that information. And it is very, very impressive to see whether it's a delivery guy or it is somebody who's coming to collect blood for my parents from our home for testing, how efficient things can be when they want to build. And that is why I think that India stands to benefit economically from the open World Wide Net. No Indian government can afford to use its law offices, its competition commission, or its taxpayers' money to spend years litigating with Google, Microsoft, or Facebook over individual practices in the European style. We don't have, unfortunately, we don't have the legal talent, like the technical talent, or as much taxpayers' money to spend on litigation, like the Europeans do. And to take the American free market position with respect to US platform companies is to endorse an immense act of digital colonialism in which the private lives of more than 1 billion Indian citizens are delivered free to the data miners. Mind me, I am not saying that deliver all data to Reliance and that's going to be better than delivering it to Google. That's not the argument I'm making. What I'm making the argument is about decentralization, or a different way to imagine something. Our greatest advantage in 21st century global economic competition is the intelligence and education of the people. Software and network-based services are core components of any digital economic strategy. And this is not aerospace, so Europe can't do it, but India can invent competition that challenges not just the platform companies, but their basic anti-environmental business model. Indian internet companies can provide global digital services, platforms that protect rather than destroy privacy. Their industries can provide reasonably priced, universally available, privacy respecting services that compete directly with the services provided by the US data miners. But they will have to be priced reasonably in local terms, because we live in India, our prices can't be the same. And in all developed and developing countries, they will have to be calibrated. The Indian industries can provide state-of-the-art cloud services, whether it's social networking, email, travel, calendaring, all could very profitably, given Indian cost structures, and compete to provide those services to everyone in the world who has seen the error now of free services. Whether it's our democracy or other things, we are already complaining all the time, but we also complain about the network effects kind of a thing. Why don't I have an alternative? This is for profit, pro-privacy IT for humanity. I like profit, like everyone else does, because profit is how we get people out of poverty. I enjoy business, and that's why I think if we are going to build for-profit, pro-privacy IT for humanity, we are going to provide something which is much more competitive. And the economies of scale in this business industry will be able to provide Indians with deeply subsidized or no-cost services based not on invading or selling privacy to multinationals, but as a consequence of the redistributed effect of selling first world consumers their data privacy as an export industry. They are ready to pay $29 to AT&T to say, don't inject ads into my browser. They will pay more for that. And that is how we actually fund the business. And as a method of restoring competitive health to an industry, nothing succeeds like competition. More competition we have, more companies exist, the better these companies, large ones, will have to behave, because there will be an alternative to go. And that's how we don't not only secure our strategic economic role in the 21st century, but also provide our own people with a chance to raise themselves by serving our own needs and the world's, and to restore the environment, the privacy environment for all of humanity. I think that's how the world beats a path to our door, rather than going to where we actually now are told to go. So that's what my vision right now looks to be. And I do think that there is a ton of benefit in thinking about these things in a little bit more ethical point of view. What's the impact of the businesses, how we are making on the larger society, and can we use that as our competitive advantage instead of just doing simple things by way somebody else has done it. And there is a lot of interest, both from early stage investment to late stage investments in new such kind of businesses, in decentralized ones. The second part, as I promised, the only thing which I will say very, very simply, I think that you all are building a lot of interesting stuff, as long as it stays human centric and your purpose about why you are doing something is clear, and you don't lose sight of it, no matter how things get challenged. There would be a lot more that will become simpler for you if your own purpose is your North Star. And the second thing I would say is that the abundance mentality. I know that we live in conditions where we are constantly jostling with each other to get ahead. But I think this abundance mentality of sharing equitably with people you work with, that's going to serve much more in the long run. Right now, it doesn't seem very clear that if I get something, I should just keep it to myself. Why should I actually share anything with them? But it's the same thing about share and share alike, and getting more larger people into your network and sharing with them equitably does help in businesses. I think when we think of human behavior, especially from a moral perspective, we often think in terms of character. And character is presumed to predictably influence an individual's behavior across situations and over time. I think that's why people force us to say, oh, let's have virtues like honesty, fairness, compassion, and that will give us morality. But a lot of my work with a lot of people at HBS, as well as law school where I went to in New York, now has informed me that there is a lot of contrary evidence which has accumulated, which tells us that our characters are quite malleable, actually. And a lot of times the situations and not the characters play in ethical decision making for leaders like yours and for like you, as well as leaders like us. So we think that, oh, everybody's going to be Dr. King or Mahatma Gandhi, but that doesn't happen because our situations impact what kind of decisions we do take quite a lot than we exist. If you all are not familiar with, I would really urge you to look up the Milgram Experiments. And that if people, I'm sure that one of the classic examples which we've seen of obedience to a malevolent authority which haunts the world to this day is killing of millions of Jews during World War II. We often asked our questions that how could so many people have engaged in such an unconscionable act? And they all seem to be ordinary, decent citizens, but they all help perpetrate a genocide. I think that helps us understand that how much we react to external authority. And there is a lot of now evidence, modern evidence, which has emerged, which tells us that we overrate outcomes and overlook dubious ways of achieving them. We move down a slippery slope and then we fail to see the incremental departures from what we believe is right. And we want to maintain a self-concept that we are decent individuals, but we engage in ethical maneuvering to take advantage of opportunities, even when they are ethically objectionable. We are very clever. We try to justify how that really works for everybody. And we make a kind of trade-off, which is often unconsciously between the self-image we want to maintain and the opportunities or the pressures which are in front of us. And following through on ethical judgments does require self-control and discipline. And these are only finite personal resources. I think it's very easy to say, be disciplined, have self-control, but they're finite. I can be disciplined about my health. I can't be disciplined about everything else. So it resembles a muscle. And once it has been exercised too much, that self-control and discipline actually weakens and sometimes fails. And studies indicate that people are more likely to do something ethically dubious after they have done something ethically praiseworthy. In other words, they act as if doing the right thing somehow has created a moral surplus. Now I can do a bad thing also, because now I can be inclined to spend. So all I will say is that when such conditions do arise in all of our lives, and because you will be in this is a marathon, because you want to be successful. If you sell one company, you want to sell another company. If you have one job, you want to create something else. That's why I think it's much better, instead of relying on our intuition, to have transparency tests. That is, ask others whom you know and respect, what would they expect to think and act in such situations? And also, because you will be managers and you will make decisions as individuals, I think it can be very important to get analysis and reactions of other people before we make any final choices. So that just helps in a way to think about things, but not to say that everything is so difficult. I will say there's a poem, if you would read, which talks about a brief romance between the bee and its flower. And because only a few days at best before the center dries and the petals die, but the bee still keeps coming every day. And she comes every day in hope of an everyday love. As long as the bee believes and her wings don't drop, there will always be flowers to love. And that's why no matter how many times things fail, there is romance in life, and there is aspiration and ambition for which you keep coming back. But if there is positivity, all of these things become much more simpler. So if you need legal advice in the US or in India on intellectual property rights issue, privacy, data protection, etc., feel free to reach out. If you want to contribute to the civil liberties movement in India, look up the Software Freedom Law Center India. And also in the US, if you are interested in any kind of help from incorporation to the stage, I don't do capital markets, but to the stage of IPO, then we can hand over to the other bankers to you, from me to you. But feel free to reach out, and thank you for your patience, and thank you for listening.
Mishi, that was not only an amazing talk, but something that is transformative, and something that actually you just triggered a whole bunch of thinking in me now also. I'm constantly, a tug of war between my reptilian brain, which tends to, these are all unconscious biases, right? Where we are programmed by billions of years of evolution to kind of tend to veer towards things that are familiar, that are like us. In a big group,
Yes.
you might end up
Group think, yes.
Especially when in a foreign land or something, there is comfort in veering towards a brown person, in veering towards an Indian or a Pakistani, somebody who speaks the same language, eats the biryani. You tend to veer towards that, and yet that our ethical position should be to view everybody in a very equal sort of a way. But our inner algorithms of the older brain, and we are still evolving as human beings, do take us in directions where, for safety and for comfort, we tend to take the shortcut towards being with like-minded, people, similar people. So I think that's where the sort of the large social media giants are failing in understanding the power of algorithms in appealing to a reptilian brain. And I think I think they're understanding it now. They're slowly understanding that with this level of data and AI and predictive, future forecasting, they are able to do things which are appealing to our older brain than to our prefrontal cortex, right? So I think that's the issue that we are all grappling with right now. And I want to ask you, actually, Mishi, before I give the Q&A to the other kids, how much time do we have, Chandni?
We have about 20 more minutes. I mean,
Okay.
10 for Q&A and then,
Yeah. So Mishi, there is, everything is a matter of cost benefit analysis, right? We are looking at what is our cost, what's our benefit. I remember there was a time when I used to pay $4 per minute to make one phone call to India, and it would take me 2 hours to reach India, right? $4 a minute. I am now on a video phone call for free for hours with my relatives in India. That's an enormous benefit for me. For that, I have given permission to WhatsApp, Facebook, Google, and all of them to use my data as they please and to serve me content that they think is useful for me, right? So I'm trusting them. For somebody sitting in Virpur, in my village in Gujarat, sorry, for my aunt or for my grandma, that value, that benefit is enormous compared to my grandma giving away her data. She's going to say, you know what, take what you want. Yeah, you want to know if I'm wearing purple slippers? Sure, it's yours. Do I have gray hair? Sure, it's yours. So grandma's cost benefit analysis is completely different from a cost benefit analysis of, let's say, somebody like yourself, Mishi, or Mark Andreessen sitting in Bay Area. Mark Andreessen's giving off his data is too costly. My grandma doesn't care. And frankly, I don't care. At this point, I've given up. I'm like, you know what? I don't care. Just have it. I give permission for pretty much everything, as long as they don't sell pictures of my children. And so what do I do for that? I don't put pictures of my children up on the internet. That's it. But for me, the benefit of these platforms is so huge. I'm happy with this and I'm okay to continue using them in a proper way. I'm also afraid, Mishi, that we should not go the path of China in terms of, like, I would not sign up for coup because I value what Twitter has done for me, even though it's an American company. I feel that China has created a balkanized pockets where China, gives more primacy, state-sponsored support for the, Baijus and, things like that, which, and I don't, for Alibaba and so on, which I don't want India to do. I don't want it to give preferential treatment to Flipkart over Amazon. So are these the dangers that we are posing, Mishi, these questions, that these fantastically, enormously important questions that you raised, are these dilemmas that you are facing too?
Sure. I'll take the second part, which you rightly said. I personally am not, I'm completely with you. And that's why I said protectionism is not going to serve us at all. And if we don't have access to the global markets, if Twitter does not have the network effects of everybody sitting from all around the world, then it's not going to be as beneficial to me. There is a reason Ku's not taking off because there are not as many people on it. So I am completely with you. That's not the approach where India should go anyway, no matter what. In fact, I want to say is that they should be offering it for global audience. So, but on the first question which you raised, I think threat analysis, you're absolutely right, is very different for everybody, as well as cost benefit analysis. So if I'm doing something sensitive or I'm a journalist, my threat analysis is going to look very different. And my data, as you said, Mark's data, Anderson's data is going to be different. Yours is different to you. Your kids' photographs are important. I personally think that's what we used to think because we didn't have another choice. We still think that if we were offered another choice, it's going to be so prohibitively expensive that we will be moving back towards the $4 a minute kind of an infrastructure. But that's not where we are right now. In the past 5 years, even if you see how much Facebook has doubled down on end-to-end encryption on WhatsApp, they were the people who actually went and challenged the government of India trying to break encryption. We challenged the government of India on behalf of free and open source software projects, because open source projects want to say, we want to just go and build everything. Maybe tomorrow it will rule the world. And how can you stop us from saying that we will have to break traceability and tell you who sent what where? And they're like, we never even keep track of everything because we don't have the infrastructure. So I will say that even the large legacy, I mean, it's amazing that these companies are barely few years, 2 decades and a half old or something. And I mean, you were the initial investors in some of them, but they're now legacy companies in that sense. But it's amazing how much they themselves are investing in new tech, which does understand the protection of privacy. Why we are investing in so many tools of search where there would be pseudonymized data or anonymized data. There is health tech. Even if you were ready to share a lot of information, I'm sure that many of us squirm at the idea of our health information or financial information to be shared very, very widely with other people. I think some lines we draw on certain things. It's perfectly fine for us to share some pictures here and there, or to send certain things which are very innocuous. And Indians, because we are very social, we have extended large families, our lines on expectations may be a little different than an American is. But that doesn't mean we don't shut down the bathroom door when we bathe or we go to the restroom. It's just different. Our relative to ask a question about very personal questions, which Americans will get very offended, but we just consider it as normal. But we also have certain lines where we draw. So I will say that's different. And that's why I think the opportunity is creating those decentralized businesses that you can cater to each one of them. If I am offering a health appointment one, in contrast to Practo, where I am not collecting people's health data and nobody's sending me a text message arbitrarily, a doctor says, here is all of your stuff which you just went to somebody else, then I am perhaps creating a little better product in contrast to these people who are perhaps selling my data. Then many of the people want to say, okay, this is much more protective. It's my health data. I don't want to share XYZ. I don't want to share whatever information I had or whatever discussion I had with my doctor. And we don't want to share our financial information. So if somebody tomorrow tells you that some of the wallets are actually taking all your data and selling it to somebody, and you come up with a product where you figure out what the business model for you will be different from that, then there is that opportunity. If I can come up, I'll invest in those.
Michi, let me stop you there though. So, but then why is it not happening? Right? Open source has been around for so long. And why is it that we are not seeing these open source giants taking the place of companies like Facebook and, well, Google, I don't know, I guess it's already, using so much open source.
But Asha, they are, if you see, the largest contribution to open source project now comes from Facebook and Google. They are using the technologies. The largest, there are so many people. Facebook, Google have beaten IBM, Hewlett Packard, Oracle to pay people and give code to a lot. Like a comment has just been made in the chat. Microsoft bought GitHub. Yes. And they have said after Satya Nadella comes in, it's completely different from Bill Gates' Microsoft. And Satya says, we are all in for open source. So Microsoft is now pivoting, and they know they can't run cloud. They can't be a cloud company or a platform company if they're not investing. So all the large companies are still in the forefront of open source. What I'm saying is that there are some smaller ones coming. There needs to be more investment in those. A Proton Mail, if was infused with a ton of cash, it would become very different right now. A Signal, WhatsApp uses the same end-to-end encryption software, which Signal, which was Open Whisper Systems earlier, uses. So we're seeing all of that. It's not as much, but you know it more than I know because you've been a veteran in this, that it's just a matter of time and then it will be an avalanche and then it just changes the scenario. And that's what I'm encouraging and hoping towards.
I think it will happen. I think I'm going to open the space for questions right now. So those of you who have questions, please start. Otherwise, I'm going to hog up Mishi's time because I've been chasing her for the last 1 month. I just found Mishi and I'm going to hog up her time. So those who have any questions, lift your hand, or who wants to go?
Vikas.
Okay, Vikas, then Shashwat, please raise your hand on the software.
Hi, Mishi. First of all, I think super condensed discussion and very high density discussion. Couple of things actually. So as per your, like you have been dealing with these, let's say tech companies, right? So first and foremost question, because most of the, so this is my personal belief, because I have been a heavy consumer of, let's say, Twitter, Facebook, and all these things for so long. So I understood this, I have seen this spectrum. So my understanding is this, because these innovation comes from US, Bay Area, the data, and the previous speaker just before you, that ma'am also mentioned about this, that the data set that we take for training all these algorithms are sometimes heavily biased. And this also came up into a Twitter thing as well. So they will put a long picture, and on top it will be a white guy, and in the bottom it will be, let's say, some African guy. So his complexion would be black, and the algorithm essentially cropped to show the picture of the white person. My thing is this: how often do you see, or have you seen that the algorithm itself has bias? And that's why, do you know what? You will never see somebody like Naval from India ranking up on Twitter. It will be always Naval from US. We do have Gaur Gopal Das, who put out amazing content, but nobody knows. Why? Because there is this guy, Shetty. I'm just forgetting his the name, right? Because he's trending. So my basis, the question in basis, the fundamental thing is, how often do you see that the algorithm itself is biased just because of the data itself? Did you understand the premise?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
I think the example also you gave is it pretty much speaks about algorithms are designed and trained on data sets. So a big thing, there is Professor Karim Lakhani at Harvard Business School, who's a big guy in AI these days. His favorite thing to say is garbage in, garbage out. You will put garbage data in your algorithm, that's the outcome you will be getting. And that's why there is a big emphasis on saying that you must understand the limitations of the algorithm. Knowing what your algorithm can't tell you is just as important as knowing what it can. Because a lot of times, if you see, a trap companies often fall into is thinking of big data as simply just a lot of records. So if you have 1 million customers instead of 10,000, that's what big data is. But this is only half the picture. You're not really making any diversity out there, and diversity does matter. I have seen this, and there are reasons why smart algorithms lead us astray. And because if we give incomplete information, because these are made by us. After that, the computer starts training. There's structured learning, there's unstructured learning, and there's reinforced learning as how they do it. But it's all based on what we will be training our data sets on. And the example you gave, there's a ProPublica study about this. There are enough studies about how police are using this. I think our tendency is that if it is done by technology or a machine, it must be right, because the human error is so high. Which is true in many cases. There are cases, for example, diagnostics, dental diagnostics or cancer diagnostics, where the human error is high, quite high. And you can use AI and create algorithms to actually reduce that. In fact, a dentist who just takes an X-ray of your teeth usually is inaccurate, even though they have a lot of, their inaccuracy rates are pretty high. And that's why AI is done better. I've seen that quite a few times. And that is why there is a big movement now in terms of making your AI less black box and more transparent. And there is explainable AI, which IBM has talked about quite a bit. There is a lot of these things which are discussing, because there's also the trade-offs which companies don't understand. They understand the soft goals, and they forget that algorithms will pursue a specified objective single-mindedly. If you will teach them that, that is what they will go for. It's just exactly like Ultron. So I'm seeing that quite a lot amongst startup companies who are clients. Of course, I can't talk about them because that's privileged information, and I will lose my license as well as clients, which I'm not going to discuss here. But I will say that one of the things which I have been saying a lot is that your data should be diverse, that different data sources should be relatively unrelated to one another. And that's where also extra predictive power comes from. If I were to take your example, that's missing out on a very large part of the population, which is a huge market. If you're just not catering to them, that is why not as many, we think Twitter is the world, but very few Indians actually use Twitter. Many more people use WhatsApp or Facebook or other such things. That's why I make a recommendation to my clients is that treat each data set like a recommendation from a friend. If the data sets are too similar, then there's not much marginal gain from each additional one. You say the same thing, another fellow says the same thing, then what is it that we are doing? But if each data set has a unique perspective, then a lot more value will be added. So that's why make your data sets more diverse. That's one major thing. It's not original advice. It's advice learned from a lot bigger experts in the industry that I offer people. But I see enough to comment on it. Not a lot, but I see it enough.
The next person is Forum. Mishi, can you just, before you take Forum's question, can you just give us an example of what do you mean by making data set more diverse? Just a small, just one example.
Sure. I will say is that let's see. Let's take example like Vikas said on. If I'm going to say, if I'm going to be training an algorithmic system on diagnostic medicine, on certain kind of looking at radiology stuff, for which machines are very good at reading that. If I do that only for one set of people from the UK, they're notorious for teeth problems in the UK. Then my AI will only recognize the kind of problems which that set of population takes in. But if I'm building for a larger market, then I do have to have other people's x-rays and diagnostics to be fed in there as well. Or the race one is a bigger problem. Many people have addressed that. So I'm going to say that that is at least decreasing. Yes. In the beginning, we had a major gender bias in many of the algorithms which were written. Netflix has tweaked its own algorithms now because Netflix algorithms were making recommendations about what content to watch, also about just a particular kind of content, and they've now widened them. There is more flexibility. So I can think of those as few examples.
Okay, let's take Hiranya because I know it's late for her. Okay, Hiranya, you're next and then Forum.
I heard you say that we make a lot of human errors and computers are very smooth. But there is one thing that we are the humans who are coding the computers. So correct. when we make errors, doesn't that mean that sometimes the computer can make errors too that way?
Absolutely. That's a great question. In fact, that is why if we have a bias against somebody, and if I am the person who's actually writing that algorithm, I will perhaps code that bias. Asha was saying that if I am an Indian and I only like Indian people, then that is a bias I will write into that algorithm. And then the computer will be making the same mistakes. As Vikas was saying, that a lot of AI systems recognize only white-skinned people for a very long time. African Americans who have darker skin, they were not even recognizing them. So you're absolutely right that human beings not only make mistakes and write wrong code, but they also code in their biases. And that is why it is really, really important to have a wide variety of people working in teams. And I can't stress enough that if your team has different kind of people, your product will always be much better. When I talk to younger people, older people, when we do our policy briefs, so we have lawyers, we have engineers, we have journalists, we have economists, and everybody tells us completely different things. A better way to do it is to learn from different kind of people and not think from just one kind. So thank you, but great question. But yes, and in a few years, I will say computers will start writing their own programs, and those might have fewer mistakes. But for now, we are giving them whatever our mistakes are.
So okay, next is Forum and then Shashwat. And I forget who will raise their hand first, but go on, Forum.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, please.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay, sure. I have a very pinpointed question. Let me know if it is, we should take it separately or not. So just a small context that there are people who buy forest land just to preserve it. There are folks, millionaires, and UHNIs who will buy certain part of. There are people who have bought certain part of Amazon or certain part of other forest for the sole purpose of preservation. And just take that as a context. And what if I'm just exploring this idea right now and want to understand what are the first few questions in terms of legal I should be thinking about in legal matters.
You mean to say, I'm sorry, I'm just going to ask for a clarificatory question here. Asking legal questions about who, whether that is legal, about billionaires buying up our planet or not? Is that the question?
No. I'm just coming to the question now, and then I'm just coming to the question. The thing is, if you take that as a context, and if I want to make such arrangement or such system where you, me, anybody could buy a piece of forest or a tree. Recently, Supreme Court have given a price tag to a tree, 75,000 plus, and it is placed like that. So the shared ownership of forest or trees is what I'm trying to explore, that idea, whether through decentralized network or a conventional network. I'm yet led to explore that. But in terms of shared ownership of a forest area or a tree, what if I'm just starting off around this idea, and I just want to understand what are the first few legal questions that I should address or what I should be thinking of.
Okay, I'm going to give you a lawyer's answer here because I do need more facts before I can actually go. Because it's the germination of an idea. I will say, you right now have, before you get about the legal part of it, right now you do want to think about the idea itself a little bit more and see if there's an uptake of the idea. But otherwise, because here this would be land usage. It would also be about what are the limitations on that kind of land, what you can and cannot do. That's a completely different set of legal questions. I do not know if it is a cooperative you are envisioning, or you are thinking about traditional knowledge which you want to preserve, or what is it that you are trying to...
So it's about, let's say there is a part of Ahmedabad, and there are, let's say, 1,000 trees, and those trees, that patch is owned by, let's say, 1 lakh people across world, just for the sole purpose of preservation. So
actually,
that is what I'm...
Forum, that's a very good question. I'm going to let Mishi answer that. But yes, technically it can be done. And Forum, remember to ask me a question later on to speak to Bimal Patel, who is at HCP in Ahmedabad, the guy who did the Sabarmati thing. We could actually find out from him what are the pros and what are the barriers or pros and cons of doing this. I think technically it can be done, legally it can be done. But let Mishi answer that.
Yes, I'm in agreement. There is no hurdle in that sense that an ownership of a place where some people, you raise money and they're ready to decide how we structure it. The ownership can be on a blockchain. How we structure it could be just simple things that this is how people's ownership is recorded. A lot of people own this place and they've all come together to pool in money, and they buy it and they decide, okay, this is how the land would be used. So I don't think that legally there is, whatever it is, it's doable. Personally, I'm that lawyer who wants you to not think of obstacles, but think of first the product and what you want to sell, and then leave it to the lawyer to sort out how to get it done. As long as you're not trying to do something so horrendous, lawyer should be helping you out instead of saying, oh no, you can't do it, you can't do it. If it is a crime, and sometimes even illegal things become legal later. Look at, so I don't think you have to think even in terms of illegality. Of course, every lawyer will analyze it, figure it out where the risks are, what you can't do. But right now, if your idea germinates, I don't think that would be a problem. We could think about how to structure the deal. We could think about how to structure the contract between the various owners and how to maintain that record, how to talk to the environmental agency in Ahmedabad. All of those things can be done. But I would first try to concentrate more and not worry about the law.
Yeah,
Hang on.
the only problem was it is not just land. I was not thinking it as a land, but just ownership of the tree itself. So the first question to me was, what if it gets on fire and it's destroyed? So actually, the people are owning
Those are
tree, but
liability
it
questions.
is.
Then
Yeah,
the
yeah,
insurance
yeah.
comes in. As I said,
Okay,
once your
okay.
idea is developed, a lot of things
Yeah, yeah.
will have to be worked out and
Okay,
sorted.
okay,
Forum,
sure.
this is a
Thank you,
brilliant
thank you.
Forum. This is a brilliant idea that you have right now. I'm just telling you, you have to create an NFT out of this. I can just give you a promise right now. You have me. I'm in
Oh,
as your
wonderful.
first bidder on your NFT. Please drop an NFT on this. This is a brilliant idea. I don't care whether it's illegal or legal, as Mishi said. Don't worry about that right now. Just do it. I think this is brilliant. You must
Yeah,
do it. And Forum, this is going to take us 6 months to pull this off. So stick with it. Okay. Don't drop off. Okay. Next person
yeah,
is
sure.
Shashwat.
Thank you.
Shashwat.
Hi, Nishi. Thank you so much for your time today. I really know.
Sorry,
Yes,
Shashwat. There's a lot of static in. I can't really hear you well. Sorry. Oh yes.
Perfect. Hi, Mishit. It's great listening to you, and thank you for your time today. Quick introduction about me. I'm based in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm a neurologist, and I'm doing a fellowship in endovascular neurosurgery, which is basically treating stroke patients. And I actually enjoyed your conversation a lot. My sister's a lawyer, so we have a lot of law-related conversations. She's in India, and on the topic of diversity and data, I just want to make a quick comment that there is nowhere where the consequence of lack of diversity in data is seen more than in healthcare. In fact, like when we say that normal blood pressure is 120 by 80, this is all from Western data. We just don't know what normal blood pressure for an Indian is. So for like last 12 years, I'm in healthcare and medicine. I've been saying, oh, mom, dad, maintain 120 by 80, but I'm mostly wrong. We just don't know what our normals are. So there's a big push to generate data specific to regions, specific to gender, obviously, and also for different age groups. But I want to just make this comment, but my question to you is more large. And as India enters into the IT age in healthcare, and as we transition to electronic health record, which is not so common in India, it's mainly on paper, on notes. But as India enters that age, we will be able to generate an enormous amount of data with our 1.3 billion population and very young. So in terms of that, are there any laws which the Indian government needs to enact to make it more responsible for its use? And what can we learn from the West and what mistakes they have made?
Thank you, Shashwat. That was a great comment, and I couldn't agree with you more about the discriminatory practices which we've seen. In fact, a few days back, I was reading Moderna's how they actually made a vaccine candidate within 63 days of receiving the sequence of the virus. People might, I was surprised, I don't know about you people, but in January of 2020, even before US had shut down, they received the candidate, and in February, on March 7th, they had sent an actual candidate to NIH and CDC for approval. But what happened was why they were beaten by Pfizer BioNTech for approval, because Moderna wanted to make its clinical trials more diverse. They knew that the people of color, the African American population, they were very suspicious of any of these things, because in the past they had been discriminated against. And that's why they decided to add more diversity. And that's absolutely true. It's about men and women. Heart attacks for a very long time, all advice was only coming from as how men are. And it happens across board. So that is related to your second question also. I think we are going to generate a ton of data. The problem here in India, which is a major problem, is that government of India has zero, when I say nada, laws on protection of health data. In fact, one of the major issues which is happening is that as much as we would like to leapfrog, and this is an excellent thing, that if we can actually understand how so many of us work, you know it better than anyone else. If we can study that pseudonymized data or anonymized data, how we would know about drug manufacturing, how we would know what is some cancer therapy is now going to be customized to every individual, is how US is doing. We don't have that in India, but that could work. There are several diseases which are only found in our developing countries. But why tuberculosis does not have the same investment? Why malaria doesn't have the same investment? It's now that WHO has approved a vaccine, is because these are poor people's countries' diseases. It's surprising that America has had 10 drugs on Alzheimer's in dogs, but we don't have anything about tuberculosis or malaria. But India government does not have any data. In fact, in basic data protection also, they've been dithering. For last 3 years, they've been sitting on a law, they've not done it. And this should be classified as sensitive personal information. So I'll put out the name of the organization in chat, but it is sflc.in, Software Freedom Law Center India, who has now challenged the government of India exactly on this. Because we are a legal services organization, we first said that you did not take consent of people and generated health IDs for them. When people went to get COVID vaccines, they also got health ID for free. That's not a good thing, because then what is happening is your data is being collected and being passed on to small companies without your consent. And your health data should, if you want to share it, it should be at least told to you. You should be informed about it, that this is what's happening. I am all for using that data for development of drugs, for us to get better services. I would love it if I go to a hospital and everything is very easy. I should be able to access all those records like I do for my hospital in New York. Wherever I am, I can get everything simply. But I also know that HIPAA laws actually will protect that sharing of that data. And if I'm in the European Union, it would be even better. America still has a little way to fix a lot of things there, but India has no laws. And that is why the organization is pushing for a legislation. It's also challenged the government of India to say, this is all great, but you can't say that, oh, all of us have to do it without our consent and our permission. And I think it's people like yourselves and other people, all of us who do have the power to demand certain things, and changes do happen. Mostly we think about, what can I do? I'm just one person. What can I do? But I will say that voices do matter. If you all decide, technically sophisticated people or generally just aware citizens, that I would like the services, but I don't like it the way you are doing it and would like it differently. Give me encrypted services. SSH connection should happen and I should be able to access my data. All of us are working from home, and many of our companies have given us VPNs because there's a particular way that they want you to access their data. So, but zero laws. And if your sister's a lawyer, please do ask her to pitch in her and volunteer her legal time to the organization. And that would be a great help to the country as well. So, but for now, I'm disappointed that they haven't done that.
Perfect. Yeah, I think those are great points. I will follow up with you over email at some point, and if I can get involved in any way in trying to contribute, just from the healthcare aspect of it, I would love to be involved.
Thank you. I put out the websites of the two organizations, and yes, please feel free to reach out to me or see the work if anything interests you. Please volunteer your thoughts, time, or whatever you have.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Chandni, how are we doing on time?
Yeah, okay. I was going to say, I have work day starting in the US. It's still Friday.
Mishi, go ahead. Mishi, go ahead. I know. You probably, oh my God, you should be fast asleep in India right now.
No, the problem is, I think that this time around, because it was a slightly longer trip, I have mostly been sleeping at 3 or 4 in the morning, doing the Eastern Coast time.
Of course.
And in the mornings doing the India thing. So frankly, I can't wait to get back, because I'm like, at least I will have one work day.
I can imagine. When is your birthday, by the way? Did you say birthday?
No, I said one work day.
Work day. And when are you coming back? What's the plan?
Next week, I should be flying back.
Okay. Well, look forward to having you back, Mishi. And
I know, and we'll get together once you're back, or if I am in on the West Coast, I'll let you know.
Please come and visit. That will be awesome. But it is so, by the way, I want you guys to know it's really special that Mishi has given us this much time. It's not easy. And we are so grateful, Mishi.
You don't have to say anything for you, anytime, any opportunity to have a little time with you. And these are such wonderful people. Congratulations to all of you to be part of this great fellowship. And Asha is such a wonderful person. I'm truly happy that I could do this. And everybody, thank you. You all are so special. And thank you for bringing me and making me part of this conversation. I am truly grateful to all of you.
Thank you, Mishi. Good night and see you soon and safe travels, okay?
All right. Thanks, guys. Bye. Thank you, guys, girls,
okay.
and whoever.
Take
Thank
care.
you. Take care.
Chandni, who is next?
We have our next session with Raghav on popular demand, since a lot of the fellows wanted to interact with him. But we do have 15 minutes before the next session starts. So in case if anybody would like to take a small break, or we can continue the discussion ourselves also.
By the way, anybody needs to take a break and go for a little bit, feel free. I mean, of course, it's probably, it's so late. Hiranya, how come you are awake right now? I know, but and tomorrow is no school? No school tomorrow?
Saturday tomorrow.
So you can sleep till late, huh?
Yeah.
I can't wait to meet you, Hiranya. Which city are you in?
I live in Mumbai, but for the lockdown, I've come to Pune.
Okay, very nice. I'm hoping right now my tentative dates, I don't know if I can guarantee, but I'm coming on 21st of October to India. And I'm hoping to see some of you. I'll coordinate. I'll send a group message to everybody about where I am, what city, and hopefully meet at least some of you in person. I haven't come for almost 2 years now, and I'm so homesick. I cannot tell you. I am just missing India right now. And, I would like to come even earlier than that. So really missing.
It's a wonderful.
And I hope to see you all in person next year. Hiranya, you have to tell your mom, okay, that in the past, the Rajeev Circle Fellowship has had a fellow who was 8 years old, and he actually came with his dad. So next year, when the fellowship happens, I think in May, hopefully, if you decide to come, Hiranya, you are welcome to come with your mom or dad or both, because that's what we encourage, for even the young fellows to come with one parent. And, then there is so much to learn. We can tell you everything about the fun things around here. And actually, I think if this May fellowship happens, I definitely plan to take all of you into some of the secret projects that we are working on at YouTube. I think Hiranya is going to love it. YouTube has some really interesting secret projects going on. And then, of course, there are always good projects going on at Google. And we will share those. By now, the older fellows have so many connections into companies that I don't have connections. So the older fellows often take me to places like Facebook and, Dropbox and things like that, where I don't have connections, but they do. So they take me, older fellows take me to these new places, and I get to understand what are the, stealth projects going on in these companies. So I think it would be fun, We can also go to some maker spaces, some things where we are 3D printing stuff. I know Aditya and Yash had bought from the Maker Fair. We had bought a beautiful laser cutter, and a 3D printer, right, Chandni? Were you there?
Last time.
They're so beautiful, by the way. And Chandni, I feel terrible that I don't know how to use them. So when the fellows come, we have to teach everybody how to use these machines. They look beautiful. I wish I knew how to use them.
It's set up Maker Space in 2018, the last fellowship that happened there.
Yeah, that's right. 2019, Chandni, 2019.
19 we had the lockdown.
19 we had what, sorry?
19 we got the lockdown, COVID.
No, 2020 we had the lockdown.
2020, I think.
Yeah, right, 19.
19 mein hua tha. 19 was the last fellowship in person.
Yes,
And hopefully 22 will be in person also. And we have some fabulous, we should just set up that whole maker space, when people are visiting. And Hiranya, what would you like to do if you do come to California? Are there some ideas? Have you thought about what kind of fun things do you like to do?
Maybe I could use some inspiration from the things around me.
Yeah.
And maybe if I get a lot of information, then I can maybe create an app on it from the inspiration. If there are any problems, so I can create an app which helps with the solutions for it.
Sure.
And
yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I'm starting to learn a lot of languages like Python, HTML, C#, and maybe by that time I get into California, then maybe by that time I know a lot of languages and I can develop a website with any of the biggest problems happening there. Yeah, that's what I would say to do.
Sure. Absolutely. Chandni, where is our young Fab Lab graduate? Chotu, where is he?
Oh, I think he moved with his dad, no? At MIT.
So
he moved to the US.
He graduated from MIT, but then I know they were in Sunnyvale.
Yeah, the entire family had moved to the US.
They have?
Yeah, they did.
Do you want to reach out to them and see what they are up to? That's our youngest fellow,
Saransh.
Yeah. Just ping them. They'll be awake, just text them and see if they can come for 15 minutes at some point, in the next day or two.
Yeah.
And but guys, I want you to know that all these people that we had today, from Ashit Shah to Radhika to Mishi, these are people that we are, I see them as for the long haul, for part of the Rajeev Circle, the extended ecosystem, the extended family. And these are people that I want us all to kind of develop, strong ties to and continue working with them, because as we go forward, there'll be questions that will come up, legal questions, somebody drops an NFT, these are all things that you can quickly shoot an email to somebody like Mishi. And if nothing else, you'll get a connection to the right resources. As far as Radhika goes, I think she's an extremely good value and a resource that we have for UN SDG kind of work. She's really plugged into the whole UN SDG thing. At Stanford, Radhika works with Radhika is actually the co-founder or almost of the Stanford Angels and Entrepreneurs, a very nice group that gets together once in a few months. But when we are at Stanford, we should also go to StartX. It's called StartX, which is the local incubator here. And they actually, I do foresee some of you applying there at some point and coming here. I'm very closely involved with StartX. So they provide initial round of funding, and you spend a few months with them actually, where they really polish up your business model and help fundraise. So StartX is another very interesting entity that we should get to know. And when people are here, I strongly encourage, having a lunch meeting or a coffee or something with these mentors. They will be coming and going from our, main place where we meet every day. I don't know if we need to have a real startup, lawyer. I don't know if you guys really want one right now. I don't think we need. I think those of you who are incorporating on Stripe Atlas, that's a great start. Maybe when you are raising the seed round, maybe that's when you might need Anil Advani, who is our sort of the real startup lawyer. See, Mishi is very high powered. Of course, she knows all about startups also, but Mishi is she's also very policy driven, very high voltage, person. When we are raising seed rounds, I think we need somebody like Anil Advani. And Anil Advani runs something called the Inventors Law Firm, which is based here. So when any of you creates a startup that is potentially having US as a customer, I think Anil Advani is sort of probably the low-hanging fruit for us. And the good thing about Anil is that we have a long relationship with inventors now, where we might be able to give them shares in the company rather than cash, right? Because to incorporate and do the whole term sheet and all can cost anywhere from 5,000 to 10,000, and Anil and team would do it for us for stock, which is great. In the beginning, you will need that. But I don't think it's necessary to bring Anil right now into the picture. But yeah. So Chandni, who's the next person you said is? Any other questions, guys, before Raghav comes? I'm here. Yeah, Vikas.
Asha, I think you brought up a very... Okay, I'm getting an echo. Okay, I think now it's sorted. So I was just saying, I think you brought up a very important point of like whether we need let's say a lawyer sort of a guy. But I definitely feel that some things can be because let's say startups at their every phase, they require a different sort of things. Maybe what we can do, not immediately, this is not an immediate thing. It's not, but it's an important thing. It's not urgent, but it is important. What we can do, we can actually have the stage of the company. And generally in those stages, there are typical questions actually which they need answers of. Let's say when you are raising A, then you need a different kind of lawyers. The same lawyers will not work, or means same agency might not work. So maybe we can map out those things, and maybe we can create this thing as a part of MJF fellowship itself. And in that, the previous alums of MJF can actually chip in. Let's say people, consider, if someone, like Raghav have already raised, the way he has filled us in onto the Stripe Atlas thing, because he mentioned a very, very subtle point, like, boss, don't do this thing in Stripe Atlas, you have to do this thing because of the regulatory changes in India. Yes. Right? Yeah. So these things only comes when you actually have gone through that critical whole process. So what I'm actually trying to say is this: MJF can actually also involve these things as a part of process itself, where it can be a combined offering itself. Hey guys, if you are in this stage and if you require, let's say, CFO or a legal kind of a help, we are gonna, let's say, invite Anil Advani for startups who are in this stage. But Mishi for, let's say, seed A or seed B, series A or series B. Like you are getting, it's combining it like I'm trying to combine it like a package.
So you say, I mean, of course, because that's easy to do. Right now, what we are saying in person, you're saying write it down, right?
Yes, I'm writing. I have written it down for myself. Like, okay, what I will require in, because do you know what, by this MJFs, I would speak for myself, but do you know what I'm seeing the value for my MJF for me? I am seeing that I have to just take care of my present because my future is almost set. Why would I say that? Why would I say that? Because I'm already getting things sorted, which I might require in future. I'm getting it sorted today. So I have to 110% focus on today, not on the future. Because let's say when I will be raising Series A, I'll just say to you, I'm coming there, help me, or I'm there. Hey, Jack, I'm going to talk to you because I'm this. So I'm saying, like, for a technology company like me in the stage where I am seeing that my future is set if I actually bring substance to the table. That's what I'm saying. Plus, that's why I've written things. That's why I've written things for me, what I require for me, because I don't know Series A.
I think, listen, I mean, if you guys want us to create some kind of a document, because are you saying we should create a document?
I'll explain in this simple manner. Is this because you anyway have like a network which is very because people are coming like Mishi, people like Mishi, which you mentioned, like she's on fire, very high density discussion. I'm saying Mishi can actually let's say consult when you are raising series A kind of a thing, because she mentioned, because that like when you are going to, even she didn't even said series A or series B, she said like if you are going for public IPO and stuff. So I'm saying not just a document where we know like these are the names of the people if you require, because let's say you took 20 people next year or the next to next year, basis on the stage, I'll do one thing. I'll actually create a document and I'll share it with Chandni, which will actually have everything what I'm actually right now having in my mind. That would be much better. And maybe I'll float it within the WhatsApp group, and I'll make it a Notion note so that everybody can contribute. I hope largely I have communicated.
Yeah, because why don't you do that? That might be the easiest way to go. Just create a document where we can add whatever we have learned and we just add it in there. But you're right, actually, because that if I had one full-time person, we would do it. Our issue right now is that Priya is managing all of the legal and tax things for the foundation. And I don't have an ED, an executive director.
I will find you. Do you want, okay, so quick question. Do you want that person to be present in your timing, or will it work for India as well? Preferably, I think India is better.
Okay. India is better simply because it will be cost effective. It doesn't matter where you are sitting, but things like creating documents, making sure that, like for example, right now we are very weak on social media. All these videos that we have right now, they should be going out literally every hour. Bits and pieces of this should be going. Chandni, who is managing the social media?
Me and 2 more interns.
You and?
2 more interns.
Are you guys pumping out content?
Yeah.
How often?
Depends. So let's say for RCF, we've been planning it stage by stage. So we had like multiple campaigns. We had campaigns for mentors, for fellows. It was all stage by stage. And now we're pumping out content for events and lives and YouTube sessions. So so we divided it as per how the event was to flow and how we wanted to interact and engage with the audience based on which topic. So in between, we also did a segment for sector-based learning. So where we had RC alums tell us details more about their sectors. That's how it was planned.
How do I see it, Chandni? Where is it? Is it coming out on Twitter?
It's there on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. I mean, Instagram is the most recent one and most where it gets posted more often, because Facebook, even if you put on stories, I mean, we don't have Facebook stories are not that much, interactive on Instagram.
That's true.
So Instagram is out most of the content.
Okay, I need to check that more. But can you make sure that Ilan gets everything for Facebook? Sorry, for Twitter.
Yeah,
she already gets automatically.
And we've actually set it up as an automatic update only. So everything that we post on Instagram gets posted on Facebook and on Twitter at the same time. So
okay, good. That's great actually. All right, so now we have Raghav here. And Chandni, is Raghav the last one? Because I know it's late for people there. Is Raghav the last one today?
We have Raghav's session as the last one for tonight. Tomorrow morning, Indian time, 10 a.m., we have a session with Nirman Dave from Obviously AI. And and the rest of the sessions are again tomorrow evening Indian time. So I'll just put it up on the group as well, and you'll again receive a calendar invite as a reminder tomorrow morning as well.
Okay, good. And will you send us a link again, Chandni?
I will. I'll share it once on the group. I'll share it once again tomorrow.
All right. Okay, let's go with Raghav. Raghav, thank you again.
No, thank you for such a large turnout even for this time of the night in India. So no thanks to me. It's good 11 a.m. here. So so no reason to be thankful to me. I just heard Tesla is moving to Austin. And you're on mute, Asha.
That is so sad. That is, I know. Well, he's been, and Elon has been threatening, right, for a long time, because look, the city of Fremont, see, this is where California is heading in the direction of, the old countries where the governments run everything. So the city of Fremont, some stupid clerk sitting there shut down Tesla last year, right? And said, oh, we have the pandemic, sorry, we can't have your employees. And Elon and all his employees, they wanted to go. They wanted to be back in the factory with all the precautions. But some stupid clerk in the city office of Fremont shut down the manufacturing activity at Tesla. And Tesla said, just hell to you, we're going. And I just hope that that stupid clerk is fired, because it's not right what they did. I mean, they are hurting entire California, all the people who are employed by Tesla. It has created so many jobs here. It's all going because of that stupid one guy who had an ego problem with Elon Musk. It's terrible. It's really sad news, actually. I'm devastated that it's gone.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I've heard a lot of sentiment of people saying that California is, leaning, more left than it should, and more communist than it should. But I don't know. I'm new. But what are your views before I start?
You're right, and partly because it's funded by us, right? Those of us who are in tech, we are the guys who are paying so much in taxes. This year, we paid $25 billion in excess because companies did well, right? So everybody paid extra in taxes. And as a result, the government now has 25 billion extra sitting in the bank, and it is using that money to bully the same taxpayers. And it's just not right. It is just, it's terrible what's happening, actually, Yeah, you're right.
Because it's a democracy at the end of the day. And, unfortunately, the people who are paying the taxes are not the people who can get you to power. Right?
No. Yeah. No, it's not that also. Actually, that's not true. I mean, unlike in India, where the the vote bank matters, here, because we have, before the main election happens, there is something called I think it's called the primaries, and in the primaries, what happens is that the people can create something called, I think it's called super PACs. Okay, so somebody like us, let's say Raghav, maybe you, me, and Radhika or somebody, we can form something called a super PAC, and we can raise money for a Kamala Harris or for Gavin Newsom or somebody in the super PAC, where we actually bypass the limits of funding, right? So right now, US law says that each person can only contribute, like, let's say $2,500 a year towards a candidate, right? But once you are in a super PAC, you can put $5 million. Nobody's there to ask you a question. So in a way, the super PAC does allow the wealthy to exercise more control, actually, to some extent. But that said, in California, there is a little bit of bullying going on in San Francisco. Like San Francisco right now, for example, we have a mayor who is literally, she's sending out a message across the United States saying, we welcome all the homeless because we have so much money. And the problem is, the San Francisco is now inundated with homeless people. There are tents and camps on the streets, and people are using the streets as bathrooms. It's terrible. It's terrible. I mean, it's, and a lot of people who chosen to be homeless can be, drug addicts and so on, making it dangerous for children to walk around there. So a lot of people are very upset with the city of San Francisco for making it so easy for the homeless to come and stay on the streets and get rooms in hotels, which they are denying. They are refusing now. The homeless are saying, we are not interested in your hotel rooms. We want to be staying on the streets. I mean, that's a level of bullying that I've never seen. So it is devastating San Francisco as a city. And as you know, Raghav, I'm sure some of you have read in the news that Google and all these guys are moving to New York City. It's terrible. Google is buying so much space in New York City. So what's going to happen? We don't know. But these are bad signs for Bay Area. Anyway, I mean, I think it will take 20 years before it collapses, but still, it's not good. What when a government is bloated, when a government has too much money, this is what it can do, because their jobs are tenured, right? There is no accountability of any government anywhere. Somebody gets a government job, it's a tenured job. You can't be kicked out. A private company can kick you out because you are measured by what you work, whether you work or not. I remember when I was in India, people used to tell me that you take a government job because you don't want to work, and you want to get paid for the rest of your life. And that's exactly how California might be heading if we don't shut down this problem. So yeah. But anyway, so go on, Raghav. Raghav, what are you going to speak about today?
So I have my screen shared. So some fellows reached out with some of their queries on how they can set up US presence, especially in circumstances where their US lawyers have advised them advised them on taking care of some Indian regulations. So I just made some slides to make it easy for people to not get lost in the boring yet essential stuff, like focus on building your business and not all this entity stuff that everybody's reaching out about. So what I'm going to talk about today is I'll have like a 10 to 20 minute, not a 10 minute, but maybe a 20-minute presentation of my slides where I help you understand what you need to do to get through the O1. And that will be the second part of my slide. The first part of my slides will be some of my views on how you can think about structuring your entities. Since a lot of you are Indian, I have tried to structure them for an Indian audience. At the same time, because I know a lot of, because we have a mixed bag of founders here. Some of them are super early stage, yet to ship to a single customer, and then there are some fellows who have raised some money in the bank. I've tried to create a flow chart to give you advice that's not one size fits all, that helps you understand how you should think about structuring your entities depending on what stage of your company you're at. Before that, let me start about Nimble's corporate journey and give you some insights there. And how our entities have evolved over the last many years. So when we started in May 2016, we were literally a hobby project in New Delhi. We were building robots, and we were just trying to see we could, build a prototype that could cook food. At that point of time, from a corporate standpoint, the question we had in front of us was, hey, do we even need an entity? And at that point of time, whatever parts we needed could be bought easily from a vendor close by using cash. There were no bank transfers as such required. If we needed a bank, we could always open a personal bank account. And so we thought there is no point paying a chartered accountant fees. So let us not have an entity at all. In the next 1 year, we made some progress and made a prototype that was ready to get some interest from potential funders. Our first of these, and feel free to raise your hand and ask questions. So a year later, we had built a prototype that could have some interest from funders. One of these funders was the Karnataka government. So now this time the question we asked ourselves was, hey, we need this government grant, which is equity free, which is not a loan. What do we do to get hold of this grant by spending the least amount of time and effort? We were based in New Delhi, and we saw that the state of Karnataka was giving grants only to proprietorships or private limited entities that were based, not proprietorship, partnerships or private limited entities that were based out of Karnataka. So that was the eligibility criteria. And obviously we did not have money, hadn't raised a dime earlier. So we wanted to keep costs minimum. So we decided to fly to Karnataka, literally, make a partnership firm and apply for this grant. 2 months later, these regulations changed, and the Karnataka government said, "Hey, we no longer entertain partnerships. Now we need a private limited firm." And so we said, "Hey, we still need to be eligible, but we need to keep costs to minimum. What do we do? Let's make a private limited firm." At the same time, now private limited firms entail you to take care of a lot of compliances. So we need to keep compliances minimum. So let us talk to a startup friendly CA who trusts us and who is happy to provide us a deferred payment schedule. So we did create a private limited entity here. But at the same time, we ensured that the CA we were working with was aware of the startup ecosystem and was happy to defer his payment for a year. We obviously had to create a compelling pitch for this chartered accountant firm. About 18 months out after we had gotten this government grant, equity free, all of that, we got interest from Indian VCs to invest, more money than we'd ever seen in our life. So 2 Indian VCs, along with one of the very few billionaires in India, decided to invest in our company. And this time, again, the question we asked ourselves was, we need to keep costs minimum again. We need to stay in India. We will serve US customers at some point of time. We need to prove that the product works. Should we flip to a US entity, considering we will have US customers at some point of time or not? We asked this question to our VC. The VC got his trusted set of advisors on a bunch of calls, and after 2-3 conversations, we decided that it made sense to remain in India, and we took money in India. Then now, it's been about 2.5 years since we got that VC money. We have built a product. We're serving customers in the United States now. We feel that to serve these customers better, there is a need for me to immigrate to the United States. As we're scaling, we're also fairly confident that we'll be able to raise a VC round in the United States. We already have interest with one of the largest cross-border funds in the world, already investing money in the company right now. The fund is called Axel Ventures. So Axel is a cross-border fund. They decided to invest, and we said, hey, now we have US customers. Now we have a US VC who is keen to invest in the company, who's already given us a term sheet. I'm ready to move to the United States. Let us now have a US entity. Let us now have an O1 visa, and let us maintain this cross-border structure. Why I'm telling you all of this is to illustrate that at any point of time in our company, we have always ensured that whatever entity we has served a very clear purpose for the company. Without a very clear purpose, there is no point in you spending time and effort and money doing all of these restructuring activities, getting different entities in different parts of the country. It serves no purpose. It just wastes your time. So your entities should serve an event. From all these slides, from this one slide, I'm just trying to illustrate that all your entities should serve an event of immediate foreseeability and high uncertainty. If you're saying that I will do a crowdfunding campaign, you should be certain that this crowdfunding campaign is happening. A, you should be certain that this campaign is happening. B, you should be certain that it's happening within the next 3 or 4 months, not 1 year down the line. Likewise, if you intend to raise VC money, you should be certain that you are at a stage where you will be able to attract that amount of money, and that this event is happening within the next 6 months, for sure. if you don't work with that high degree of certainty and with that high degree of forceability, you might just be wasting a lot of your time and effort and resources. So so far, does anyone have any questions? I think I would want you to, I would want to answer any questions before I move forward. I don't see any hands raised right now, so I will continue chatting. So I've created a simple flowchart to help you decide whether or not you should be a US-based entity or not at this point of time. And let us make this interactive. So question number one you typically ask is, where is your market? And amongst you, how many of you have your market in India? Any show of hands? Any one of you have markets in India? I can't actually Zoom. It's very difficult to see all your faces while I'm talking, but yes, okay. So I see one person saying they have their market in India. If you have your market in India, just stick with an Indian entity. Do not think about Stripe Atlas, or don't think about immigrating to the US or getting a lawyer. No point. If your market is in India, even if you feel you need US investors because the Valley has more money, and a Valley investor would be unlikely to invest in an Indian company which has Indian customers. So continue to focus on getting money raised from Indian investors if your market is India right now. This is the biggest question in deciding whether or not you will open a foreign entity or not. If you have a US entity, or if you have a US market, then the next question you ask yourself is, do you fulfill any of these criteria as Indians? Any of you fulfill these criteria as Indians? Those of you whose market is India? I don't see any hands up right now. Okay, great. So only, yes, I see one hand up. So if you have, if you fulfill this criteria, any of these criteria, then go ahead, set up a US entity through Stripe, through foreign money, through money that you've earned outside of India. So you had a job in Google at some point of time, or you have a relative who lives in the United States, and this relative is very close, and you can establish some sort of a bloodline with them, get them to incorporate this entity for you, and I'll just send you some forms, and just file another form where they gift that share to you, and you're set. You're done. Go ahead and run your business. If you do not fulfill any of these criteria, then the next question you ask is, are you VC funded, or do you have a term sheet as of now? Any of you who are VC funded or have a term sheet from a VC, not an angel? So no, one of you, I see a hand raised, two of you, I guess. So if you have a term sheet, and if you have three of you, I guess now. So if you have VC funded or have a term sheet, you talk to your lawyer or talk to your VC to set up the entities. This is very similar to what we did last time and what we are doing now, right? Our VC said they want to invest. We said, okay, hey, these are our options. Talk to the guys who are experts and help us understand, how to get this structure in place to also ensure you are compliant, because your VC might have restrictions, right? If you have an Indian VC, Indian VCs are governed by RBI regulations, where they can only invest a certain portion of their money outside of India. Or there are VCs in the US who can only invest in certain sectors. So they would want your company share SHA to reflect that. So talk to your lawyer or talk to your US VC to help you figure this out. If you don't have a term sheet, or if you're not VC funded, the next question you ask yourself is, hey, am I running a crowdfunding campaign? And because I'm running a Kickstarter campaign and we're not allowed to run this campaign out of India, I need a US entity. So any of you who are planning to run a crowdfunding campaign? No hands up, I guess. Yes, one of you, Anushka, I think, is planning to do one, and so is Siddharth. So if you're planning to run a crowdfunding campaign and you have a US entity, and doesn't matter if you have Indian money or not, just set up a US subsidiary. Don't think about setting up a parent entity. So have this subsidiary and you're set. So go to Stripe. Instead of an individual setting up the entity, just set it up through your Indian company and you're good to go. And lastly, if none of these are true, then you set up through Stripe, take angel money, and still run with it. Whenever you grow big, just ensure you talk to your lawyers again. They will help you restructure, get whatever structure you need in place later. While you're small, it doesn't really matter. So just set up through Stripe, take angel money, and run with it. So here, any questions before I move to O1? I think these few slides were the small bunch I created for US entity creation and all of that, and I can jump to the O1 on the next slides. If you have any questions, just unmute yourself and fire away.
Anybody?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, hi, Raghav. So my video is not working today. I have a question. So my company is Indian company, but we are building a product which is for US market. I'm trying to understand, and I've pitched my new product to a lot of angels and VCs, and few of them are interested. When I visit there, they want me to meet them. But obviously, I have to register my company there. Like, it will not work by subsidiary. But my current company, which has like customers in India, it was kind of a MVP for a bigger vision I have. So the bigger vision is the product which I'm building, which is for US market. But the smaller MVP or a company which is I am working in India, which is also big, but yeah, it caters to Indian market only.
So yeah, go ahead.
No, so I'm just asking you, how should I go about it?
So my advice here would be, if you're talking to US VCs, let them commit to you, let them offer you a term sheet. Once they've offered you a term sheet, ask them, would you be comfortable investing in this Indian entity where my market is India, or would you rather want me to flip to a US structure? If they say that, I want you to flip to a US structure, then talk to their lawyers.
Oh, okay. So they will take care of it if they're interested, you're saying?
Even if, yeah, so even if, even if they don't take care of it, at least you have a high degree of certainty that you will be able to pay your lawyers.
Okay, because I was told by one of the angels that he will connect me to the VCs, but I have to be registered here before he can pitch on my behalf to them. But you are saying after the commitment only, I should think about it, not before.
I mean, set up through Stripe. It doesn't matter if this angel is saying that you need a US entity. Just set up this entity through Stripe. Don't link it to your Indian entity yet.
Okay.
So set up through Stripe. Tell him this entity is set up. Start pitching. And once you get a commitment, then forget about this Stripe entity that you set up.
Okay, got it.
And talk to their lawyers. It seems to me this Stripe entity, I'm not sure if it is 100% compliant. So, do you want me to restructure it? At this point of time, you'd have money because US lawyer. So the lawyer, I've been connected to, charges $1,000 an hour.
Oh, wow.
So $1,000 an hour for the lawyer, and then thousands of dollars for California filing, and then maintaining a cross-border structure. Going through transfer pricing. You're setting yourself back by about 100K a year.
Oh wow, no, that's a lot.
So you need to have high degree of certainty before you take that plunge.
Got it.
Yes.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead. I see another hand up. Sorry, I can't see your names because I'm presenting. But yeah, go ahead.
Hi, Raghav. Vikas this side.
Hi, Vikas.
Hi. Hello. So help me understand this. So one thing which you just mentioned, so 100K would be required for like, even if you really just want to set up a, let's say, okay, my first question, can I set up just a new US company sitting in India just for, let's say, right? So that doesn't have any connection with what I'm doing right now, correct?
Correct.
Right. Then second thing is like, what is the basic cost? I think basic cost is just $500 to $1,000. Is that all? Right?
Correct. Yes. Yeah.
And then 100K, which you just mentioned, it comes in what context? In
It
which
comes
context
it comes if you already have an Indian entity, if you already have some investors who have invested in that Indian entity, and you will have to sort of dissolve that entity later, have a US parent, have the US parent buy out the Indian entity, restructure all that bit. And then over the entire year, because your cost center is India and your revenue center is US, you'll be paying taxes to, even if you are loss making, you'll be paying taxes to the government because, you need to be at, if you understand all of this, right? You need to be on arm's length basis. So you need to pay 15%, you have to charge a 15% markup and then pay taxes to the government because you're charging that markup. So, so restructuring plus transfer pricing plus getting a CP on board, because, now the CP has to ensure that, you're compliant.
What CP? Sorry, what CP?
CPA, the CA equivalent in the US.
Okay.
So CPA charges you another like $200 to $300 an hour. So this is only if, as I said, this is only if you have revenue and you have customers. If you have no revenue, no customers, you're just doing a hobby project, you don't have to invest in any of this.
Got it. Understood.
Yeah. So Anushka, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I just have a follow-up question. Yeah.
Let's have Vikas finish.
Yeah, just a follow-up thing. So I think, like, as you said, I think you set a very good filter with the certainty factor, because I was assuming, I was under this impression that I was just assuming I should have a US entity because it looks good in the bottom, in the footer. We have a US address as well. But I think it's a good bar to actually have that, like, when we are sure, because what you are saying, I'm not bothered about 100K when I have a probability that yes, I'm gonna, let's say, raise a round or something like that. So I think I should drop that idea. I just don't want to look fancy. I really want to have actually a right need for that. That's why, and this is like, I think this simple flowchart is actually doing its work. Thank you.
So that being said, Vikas, if you still feel, a fancy address helps, or, having fancy Delaware C Corp helps, set it up through Stripe, have that fancy address, distribute your business cards. Just ensure that at the time of your VC round, you don't have to, take money in this entity, no matter what your US lawyers tell you, because at this point of time, you were governed by Indian law.
Yes.
But at that point of time, you'll have the money for, for the lawyers to help you out.
Yeah, that's a money problem. So I think money will solve the money related problem. Yes, please, Anushka. Thank you, Raghav.
Yeah, so my question is, so if I'm registered with Stripe, will it affect if I'm the director, like I'm director in 2 of the companies? Will that affect in some way as a legal formality?
You can't have shares, but you can be a director. No harm in being a director.
I can't have shares. Okay. And the other point you said is, unless you are earning money out of that company, there's no need of anything. So in India, I registered my company much earlier, before I got like my first check from the client. So do you think that affects, like, should I have the product launch and everything, and when I expect the money to come in, then I register?
No, can you be clear with your question? Can you be slightly more clear with your question?
So actually, we are having a product, like an app, which we are planning to launch for US market. You said don't register it or don't do anything unless you have money coming into your account, like a revenue generation company, right? For my company in India, I did the same thing. I had it registered 1 year earlier before the first check came in, because I was pitching and talking to clients, etc. But I realized I could have like foregone 1 year of CA salary if I would have not done that. So do you think for US, if I register now with Stripe, and I have no revenues for say a year, do you think it affects, or I should do it later? Like, do you think that's like a loss of, because I have to pay a CA salary or whatever?
So my question again is, So does your setting up a US entity serve an event of immediate forcibility and high certainty? If it serves a purpose, set it up. If it doesn't serve a purpose, then no point. Does it serve a purpose?
I think the only purpose is that one, obviously, you'll be able to meet angels and VCs. At least they'll listen to you. Otherwise, if you say you're not registered, they'll not introduce you. And second thing, you can have clients. You can at least talk to the clients in US. Even though the first check comes late, at least you're prepared to get it. Otherwise, if you get the check, then you're not ready at that point of time.
Okay. If you have the slightest guilt, just set it up through Stripe and continue to have those conversations. And later you'll have the opportunity to forget about it if things go well.
Sure, sounds good. Thank you.
Just wind it up. This I also wanted to highlight this. So so this is a very good example. So when we got Karnataka government grant, only then we set up a Karnataka private limited firm. Now, if we had set up a private limited firm in May 2016, in the hope that we would raise VC money sometime later, we would have become ineligible for this grant, because this grant was only put aside for Karnataka firms, whereas we had started in Delhi. So if we had set up a private limited firm, by default we would have opened up a New Delhi private limited firm. So it can make you ineligible for certain things also. So now we have set up this US office. We are now again ineligible for this grant, although it is they're still offering these grants. We are not eligible, but it's fine now. We don't care about those grants. So yes, I'll share these slides with you. But anyone else who's probably waiting? No, right? This is good. So I'll move to the next section, which is the O1. O1 visa is again a visa that you get if you want to work out of the US and live out of the US and basically serve customers out of the US. If you do not intend to serve customers or relocate to the US, might as well just carry on with your B1, B2, because you can still spend 6 months in a year on your B1 visa in the United States. And in excruciating, extenuating circumstances, you can always, ask for a B1 extension. At that point of time, you can file for an O1. But essentially, O1 is if you want to migrate to the US. And there are 8, typically to get the O1, there are 8 criteria, 3 of which you need to meet to even qualify for the O1. And then, so 3 out of 8 criteria you need to meet at the minimum. And every additional criteria just adds another star to your application. And the USCIS, which is the United States Immigration Service, essentially approves this visa based on what the immigration officer is feeling at this point of time. And I'll just take you through some of the criteria for those who are trying to get the visa. Any one of you who is trying to get the visa? Vikas was trying, right? No.
I just found out that my passport was expired. I just reapplied.
Okay, got it. I can see one hand. I can see 2 hands. Anushka and another gentleman whose name I can't read. 3 people. So great. Okay. So so the first criteria you need is you've received lesser. So before jumping into the criteria, let me just talk to you about the O1. So the O1 visa is the extraordinary ability visa. It is given to people who demonstrate extraordinary ability in the field of business, arts, sciences, television, and so on. So if you are a film star and you can demonstrate that you've won an Emmy award, well, you are certainly eligible for an O1. If you are a sports personality who's participated in national level athletics in your country, you are eligible for the O1 visa. For an entrepreneur, you need to demonstrate that you have great business ability, that you have like fantastic business acumen. And for that, the government again defines, USCIS defines a lot of criteria. The first of those criteria is a nationally or internationally recognized prize or award. And in the case of entrepreneurs, typically your lawyers argue that venture capital is an award that is internationally recognized and is very hard to obtain. They find out data that show that only a handful of companies on the planet get VC financing, and hence it can be shown that it is an internationally recognized award. And so it is very important for you to have gotten VC financing amounting to at least, say, $500,000 or more. If you've raised it from a reputed VC, then it helps. If you've raised from an angel, it can still probably go through depending on who's reading your application. But if you have a VC, it really helps. So this is one criteria. The second criteria is you're a member of an association. So this is called the membership criteria. Simply put, you are recognized as a member of, say, NASSCOM in India, or there's a Forbes list that you are part of. Forbes has given you some sort of a membership, so you can recognize you've been through an accelerator. You can say that then that accelerator has conferred you a membership. The third is published material in major media outlets about you. This could be press, a lot of articles written by any internationally recognized newspaper. Local newspapers also work, but if it has broader readership, it is more helpful. You have judged the work of others in the field. Any startup competition where you were, say, invited to judge would be a judging criteria. You have made original contributions of major significance. This could be patents. This could be paper you've written. You've written scholarly articles in professional journals. Again, very similar. Original contributions could be anything that's not necessarily in a professional journal. This has to be in a professional journal or media article. Then you have been employed in critical or essential capacity for organizations of distinguished reputation. So being a founder, you are already employed in critical capacity or essential capacity, but your organization should have distinguished reputation, which means if you have not invested in press, if you've not invested in getting some publicity for your startup, this might be the opportunity. And lastly, you've received a high salary or other remuneration. Again, if you're VC funded, your lawyer can argue that your stocks are worth a lot of money, more than more than a typical salary in the Bay Area. So then that also helps your case. Any questions here? If you want to ask a question about whether or not you qualify because of in a certain criteria, you can just ask that question away.
Hey Raghav, I'm Shashwat. I'm not sure if you can see me.
I can, Shashwat. Hi.
Okay. Hi. So I have a startup. We are trying to make brain stents for stroke treatment, and I am a doctor myself, and I'm doing like my training in Arizona in Phoenix. And so I have an O1 visa through like working at the hospital full time, so that's okay. But we are actually interested in like trying to get 2 engineers from India to try and work on our projects to make a stent and bring them over to India on some kind of a visa. So I think B1, B2 is the most straightforward, where they can come for maximum up to 6 months. But I think in the future, if we do want to get them an O1 visa, so it's not always easy for, like, I think, engineers from India to meet these criteria, because they are very I'm guessing PhDs do, because they have some papers, and they have some with their work being at big conferences being out there. But is there a roadmap to which you would recommend of what we can have our engineer go through for 6 to 8 months to meet at least some criteria for one and stand a chance?
Why would you not consider the H1B or the L1?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for L1, we require to have an Indian company as well. So it's an intercompany transfer. So we don't have an Indian entity yet. So L1 is out of the option. It's not an option as such. And for H1B, these guys have already been in the US for like 6 years and their I-140 was not approved. So I don't think can be on an H1B again. So
Okay, got it.
O1 probably is the only option. So
Okay.
my question is, did you like spend some time, building up your profile, or did you have any expert help who, you know, you know, try and get your names in some kind of like a media journal, or but I'm sure you for sure had a CV which is much more than what was required. But for someone who's trying to build from scratch, is there like a service offered somewhere in India or abroad?
I am not aware, but L1 it should be fairly straightforward for you because you can just set up an Indian subsidiary, right? What's the harm there?
But don't we need to be in India for at least an specified amount of time in India before you can do that, or is it very like?
So you need to be in India for a year.
I see.
So what you can do is just set up an Indian subsidiary, have your folks travel to the US on a B1.
Yeah.
Have them go back to India for 1 or 2 months. Have them come back again on a B1. And by that time, they would have served 1 year in the Indian entity and you migrate them on the L1.
So they did not like physically work in India on a B1. They can just be employed by the Indian entity for a year.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
They need to be on India payroll for a year.
Okay, perfect.
But I would still recommend you talk to a good immigration lawyer and they should be able to help you out.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, J1 is also an option, right? Which is the... Yeah.
I think J1 is an option only if we can sponsor a J1, and that I think requires substantial infrastructure like a university or
got it.
A J1 sponsor. I don't think but it's a good thought. It's worth asking.
Okay.
J1.
Cool.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, go ahead. I can't see your name. I'm so sorry. The girl in pink. I can't see your name.
Anushka. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So
Yeah,
I have 2 questions. Yeah. One is that when you said recognize awards and prizes, if you don't have VC funding, will a conference in which is like sponsored by say US Embassy or like UN, will those help? Like it was not an award, but you are like sponsored and like you are called for a conference to like be part of it. Those kind of recognitions help, or like is it just like VC funds or Forbes or those kind of awards?
So you need to demonstrate that this award is of high, is of national or international repute. So for example, if you had gotten through Y Combinator hardly invests what, $100,000, not even close to $500,000. But it is very easy to justify that for Y Combinator, there are like more than 10,000 people who apply, only 100 or 200 get through. There's an acceptance rate of less than 2%. And there's enough media out there talking about how to get through Y Combinator, or how to make the plunge there. So if your conference is of extremely high repute that way, let us say it is a Davos, it's one of those Davos conferences, right? World Economic Forum. And you say I was awarded some, prize at World Economic Forum. It is very easy to justify that, look at any article in the newspaper and, you can justify that it is of high recognition. It is very highly recognized.
Got it. And for the media, when you're saying, is it like you have a timeline when you were covered in media? Because we earlier were covered a lot, but then we stopped reaching out to journalists because it didn't give us much traffic. It just gave us PR. So I just wanted to know, like, we can still reach out to the journalists again and ask them to cover, but it doesn't help us as a business much. So is it important? Has the timeline that it has to be covered like last year, last to last year types?
Doesn't matter.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Cool. I think that those are all the questions we have, right, from this slide at least. So great. So going ahead, there's just a few other considerations for the O1. One is you need a US entity to sponsor your visa. It's an employment linked visa, which means that if you get an O1 in a certain company of yours and that company doesn't work out and you have to wind it down, you have to then reapply for an O1 later. You can't continue to stay on your O1 in the United States. Or if you decide that a friend is going to sponsor my O1, you need to be employed by that friend for the duration of your US stay. Second is put aside like $10,000. Your lawyer will probably take $7,000 and then another $3,000 for filing fees. And then an easier alternative is something called the International Entrepreneur Parole, which was launched maybe about, not launched, but which was activated only about 2-3 months back. In the Biden administration decided to continue this. The Trump administration had scrapped it altogether. So International Entrepreneur Parole does not require you to have does not require you to meet all of these fancy criteria. You just have to tell them that I'm an entrepreneur. I have VC funding amounting to $250K, and give me the parole. And you visit the US and you can work in the US for as long as you want, as long as you own at least 10% of the company, and the company has raised $250K. And then while you can build the business in the US, and if you do well, you can always migrate to a different visa. So yeah, I mean, that is all. I think I only have now 10 minutes left anyway. I'm glad this was interactive, but if you have any questions whatsoever, feel free to ask them. I'll just stop sharing my screen. I think Nimi has a question.
Raghav, 2 quick questions. The parole is relatively new, right? So they don't have very successful cases, or are there?
I'm not aware how successful the cases are, but in the absence of any alternatives, it is worth giving it a shot.
And if you don't mind sharing, would you want to then chart out like how you planned from O1 to like your own journey from O1 to getting an EB1 A or a B? I believe that would have been the most logical trajectory for you.
So I have not planned my EB1 A or C. Reason being, I'm not entirely sure yet whether I want to immigrate to the US. I just got married about a year back, and this is the first time my wife is traveling to the United States. So I wanted to live life in the United States for about a year before I decided whether or not I want to migrate. And it's a good question also because I want to highlight another thing here, which is that O1 might not necessarily be the best option for you. In fact, if you can get the L1, try getting the L1. Because L1 gives you a faster route to green card, and then your spouse also has working privileges in the United States. On an O1, whenever you decide to have a spouse, your spouse cannot work in the United States. Your immigration EB1 A or C is also relatively longer.
Okay, sorry. Can you elaborate more on that? How L1 is faster than O1? Sorry.
L1, whatever route they take, I do not know what line they take, but for founders, there's the L1 for founders or executives of an MNC, and there's the L1 for managers of a company. So if you get the L1 for executives for MNC multinational executives, you get your green card within 1.5 years.
Thank you.
So not for people who are on the managers or your employees. If they get their L1, they'll be in the same queue as the H1B guys. So yeah. Anushka, I think, has a question.
Yes. So that 250K you've mentioned, right? Which kind of you don't have to do the previous points in that case. So 250K has to be funded by angel or VC in India or in US, or it can be a revenue as well, like profits, I would say.
It has to be VC money. From what I know, I haven't studied studied it in detail, but from what I know, from the surface of it, from the face of it, it's VC money. You can always go online and search for international entrepreneurial parole, and USCIS has enough information. Vikas.
Raghav, can you also help me, because I've never been to US, but I've been to Prague once, and I know like they gave me my passport on just like less than 24 hours before my flight, and my heart was pounding whether I'm gonna get the visa or my like whole the expense is gonna go into the water or something. So can you just also walk me through, because I've never been to US and this whole process, can you help me also, like what does the process looks like and how much time does it take for the visa and all these interview and like all these things?
For
on
the
a very,
O1?
very brief. Yes, for O1 maybe. Yeah.
Okay.
Because I'm seeing O1 suiting us because I'm the founder of my company and I'm into this blockchain domain and crypto domain. I see US as my targeted country. So that's why I see, like, I think you choose O1 specifically for the founders. I think that's why you chose O1. Yes.
So those who don't want to immigrate necessarily, but just get visit the US, the visa you get is the B1, B2 visa. The process is straightforward. You go online and you fill a form called the DS-160. DS-160 is the visa application form for the United States. You fill it up, you submit it, you get an appointment at a US consulate, and they stamp you the visa. It can take up to 30 days for them to stamp a visa. For O1, you essentially, there are two ways for you to apply for an O1. One is if you're present in the United States on your B1 and want a change of status from B1 to O1 while you're in the United States. That is also possible. The second way to do that would be for you to, while you're in India or any other country, you apply for an O1 and proceed for the application that way. For the O1, you always engage a lawyer because a lawyer knows best how to, write your achievements in a manner that they seem interesting to the person reading your application. A good lawyer would take about 4 weeks to 4 to 6 weeks to prepare your application. Now, questions are typically a question that is asked is why would it take 4 to 6 weeks to prepare my application? Like 4 to 6 weeks is a lot of time. That is because this application is roughly, in my case, it was 400 pages. I know people whose application was 800 pages. What they do is they write like a 10-page letter to the USCIS saying this guy deserves O1. And then they have another 300, 400, 700 pages of evidence for every word they wrote in the letter. If they wrote that, Anushka got, the opportunity to present at this very reputed conference, they will have at least 40 pages covering how reputed this conference is. If you say that I'm a founder, and I receive VC financing, there is a chance that the USCIS guy he's a government clerk, right? He's never heard of the term venture capital. So they will write maybe 30 pages of evidence to show that venture capital, what is venture capital, how big of a deal it is. So all that evidence is collated by them. Many times they ask you for, say, congratulatory emails that you got, you got funded. We're sure that there are other VCs who wrote an email to you, congratulating you for your achievements. So you might take a week to just scour through your inbox, finding, hey, where are those congratulatory emails? Or, Anushka said she already has a lot of press, but it was like 1-2 years back. So it would obviously take some effort for you to search the internet for all those press mentions. So, and then there will always be back and forth between you and the lawyer. The lawyer will send you something and you will review it and you will send it back and you will ask them for corrections. So it takes 4 to 6 weeks for them to prepare the application. After about 6 weeks, you're ready to essentially, submit the application. They do it online. You can choose to opt for premium processing. Premium processing is an additional $2,500. If you choose premium processing, you get your visa within 14 days or within 15 days of application. In my case, I got it within 7 days of me applying for it. But if you are not in such an urgency, they take, I think, up to 90 days to get back on the result. Once you're and so far you've not had to visit any government office, any USCIS office, any consulate. All of this is online, right? So you talk to your lawyer online. He or she prepares your application online. You submit it online, and you get a response online within within 2 months of the date of you starting the application. 2 months later, if you're there is a chance that your application has something called an RFE, which is a request for examination. That, hey, we love you, we like you, but there are some loose ends that we see. You're spelled Vikas with another A at some of the press articles. Can you tell us why Vikas has a double A? Or we're not certain of the credentials of maybe you have been arrested once during Anna Hazare's protest, and they're like, hey, we see, why have you been arrested? We need to talk to you about this. So you might get an RFE, and your lawyer would take another 15 to 30 days to respond to that RFE. But if you don't get an RFE, then you take out a print of that approval notice. You go to a US consulate that's close to you. You show them that approval notice. You show them your face. You show them you're a legit person, and they stamp your visa within 3-4 days. They don't grill you a lot. You're typically set if you've got that approval. So that's the process. Yeah.
And it doesn't matter like whether I have any relative, because I do not have, I have absolutely zero relatives there in US. So it doesn't affect that. Yeah.
No, it doesn't matter. Neither do I.
Perfect.
So no relatives in the US. I didn't even have an entity in the US, to be honest. So when I applied for an O1, it was literally a shell entity. Like the entity had no shareholders. It was just incorporated, no shareholders. I asked a relative to just write down that he's the owner, although there is no paperwork proving he's the owner. And they gave me the visa on a fictitious entity, literally. So oh shit, this is being live streamed. We need to get this down.
Yeah. I think it's
an
custom.
entity.
Yeah.
I mean, the entity is still being formed. So they gave me the visa before all the I's were dotted and the T's were crossed. But anyway, Forum, is that how we pronounce your name?
Yes.
Okay. Hi. Sorry to keep you waiting for so long.
No worries. I have a very naive question.
Mm-hmm.
And so pardon me if it sounds a bit
no, don't worry about it. It's a safe space.
Yeah. So in your first part, you have incorporated an entity wherever the money took you, like your journey and the incorporation was like that. But
correct.
In a hypothetical scenario, if your product is something for everyone and it's a digital product, and considering you have money wherever you want, so so eliminating the criteria of money, then if you look at the different places, which is a good place to incorporate a company? Like if I ask in that terms.
Okay. Let me just read through this chat once. Delhi should not apply. Would want to valid 10 years. Okay, sorry. Yes. So I think where should you incorporate it? Ultimately depends on the money at the end of the day. To be honest, because in this case, if you are having revenue and you have a lot of customers and you don't need VC money, you still need your entity in a place where your taxes don't become a problem for you. In the case of, say, Vikas, which is a highly regulated industry, if he was registering in US, he would want his business to be in Miami as opposed to, say, Chicago, because Miami is more crypto friendly. In your case, if it's a purely online business, like register at a place which allows you to pay the least amount of taxes.
So it is again case dependent, case to case. Yes. You are saying with the taxes.
Yes. Yeah, it depends on taxes. It depends on incoming money. It depends on regulations. For example, some people do not want their businesses in California because California. You can't hold your employees. Your employees don't have to serve a notice period. Technically, they could just leave you tomorrow. So the law of the land is very important.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Does that help?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, is there, so there is no clear, like there is no one answer ki this is the best place to register in terms of taxing and all that, right?
No,
It is
it
all
depends on your business.
business. Yeah, okay. Okay.
Depend on your business, depend on your customers, depend on your operations to a large extent.
Okay,
Depends
and
on where you want to be. Maybe your family is closer to a certain city.
okay, and I so in India also there are different cities, like state-based registration. Like I read in the comments, Anushka's comments. So there are state-based. So if let's say you are getting money from across India wherever you wanted, so where you would have registered, like in your home state. So again, in Indian state, which is the better one? Like
home state would be the right one, because home state, it is easier to make government filings. Home state would be best unless there is a certain state which is offering you the incentive to move there. For example, Ather Energy, right? It's an electric vehicle company. They moved from Chennai, very close to IIT Madras, where all the talent is also present, to Bangalore, because Bangalore said, hey, come free land, subsidy for
Okay.
electricity.
Okay. Okay, sure. Thank you.
I'll just make a quick point for Vikas and anyone who's looking for an O1, and I'm sure Raghav may have made it already, that, start making a folder on your laptop and put everything which you think you achieved in your life in that folder. So it becomes easier to assemble everything about yourself at a moment's notice, and it will significantly reduce the lag time from the time you decide you want an O1 until the lawyer can file it.
Right.
Thank you.
But,
that was
yeah.
that's a good logistics to take care. Yes, right. Thank you.
I know, in fact, now that you say it, Shashwat, I know people who are working on their EB1s and EB3s, and what they do is they maintain a personal website only for all these personal achievement
So
publications.
what I do is, and I can even share this with people if they want. I have a Google Drive account, like it's called Shashwat Desai visa@gmail.com. Okay. And on the Google Drive, these 8 criteria which Raghav listed down, I made separate folders for them. And anytime in my life, I think remotely it may meet one of those criteria, because these are same for EB1, O1, all these major visas have very similar criteria. So if you find anything about yourself, take a snapshot, put it over there. So when time comes, it's like very easy to withdraw from there.
And those of you who don't know, I think Shashwat would agree, but visas are one of the favorite dinner time conversations of any Indian in the Bay Area.
Yeah,
in the United States.
There are like layers of stresses, and visa is a significant layer of stress for a lot of Indians, especially because Indians and Chinese, because we have a long wait for most things as compared to non-Indians.
I just want to share one small thing. So I did my MCA from NIT Durgapur, and there are a lot of Nepalese friends are also there. So he was selected in Microsoft, and after a couple of years, he went to US. I just pinged him after a year or so. And I just asked him, and I just asked him, like, I don't know, like how the conversation went to GC. So I didn't knew like what was GC. And he said, like, I got my GC. And I was like, dude, how come you got the GC? And there are friends like looking up in like, kare yaar, wo Nepalese ke liye jo hai na, wo 1.5 साल वो 1.5 साल में मैंने कहा यार ये सही है मैंने कहा मुझे लगता है कि बेस्ट रूट ये है कि पहले नेपाली सिटीजनशिप लो and then वहां पे जाओ.
No. I also thought of the same thing. I thought I'd become a Sri Lankan national and get a green card, but it's not of what nationality you hold, it's where you were born. So you could be an Indian national, but your mom was in Kenya when you were born. No worries. It's your place of birth which is important.
Oh yeah.
It's not your nationality. So I have a friend who looks exactly like us, brown, Indian, Pakistani. I'm like, how the hell did you get visa so quickly? Oh, I was born in Kenya. I'm like, acha. That makes sense.
So I was at Mauritius embassy, and a person was, I think, rejected a visa because the visa officer suspected that this lady was pregnant and then she was going to the US just to get her kid, like just to give birth in the US and then come back to the country so that the kid is born in United States.
In all honesty, I've seen a lot of Indians do that.
Yeah.
So let's not judge anyone else.
Yeah.
I've seen everybody
Raghav,
come here for PhD postdoc, get married. My own biradari, they get married here, have kids, and they are like, "Acha, bachcho ka to US citizenship ho gaya na." So that's how they operate. And I'm not. I mean, it's not even wrong.
No judging. Yeah. It's absolutely fine.
I mean, you're giving the kid a platform. At least उस वजह से पैर जरूर छुएगा तुम्हारे.
Correct.
Acha,
So,
one more thing, Raghav. Actually, you took let's say you didn't went to US directly. You had a stay in Mauritius last time
Right.
when you were on the call. So can you also just help us
Elaborate why?
Yes. Because the link that you shared in the Slack, in the Slack or in this thing WhatsApp, I didn't find Indian related thing, and because I got Covishield punched in my body twice.
Right.
I don't know like whether Covishield is gonna get accepted or not. So what's what's the structure right now?
So, people no need to worry. So I had to go to Mauritius before I entered the United States, primarily because the US consulates across the world were closed and were not giving visa appointments to anybody due to COVID. Those that were giving appointments, they were only giving appointments to their own citizens. So the Qatar consulate was open. The US consulate in Qatar was open, but the US consulate in Qatar was only giving appointments to Qatari nationals. Likewise, any European country, their consulates were open, but they were only giving appointments to their citizens. So Mauritius was one of the very few countries that said that we don't care about citizenship, because Mauritius is also like a tax haven for a lot of people. So Mauritius said US consulate in Mauritius said we don't care about your nationality, you can get your visa here. So I was in Mauritius primarily to get my visa after my approval had come. So I told you, right, after your approval comes, you need to take a printout, go to a consulate and get them to stamp your visa, because your visa needs to be on your passport at the end of the day.
So essentially you can go anywhere like where the consulate is open. Like once you get the approval, you can get to any consulate.
Correct.
Any country's US consulate essentially. Oh wow.
Correct. And that is because, what if you're in Kenya for business and all of a sudden you have to travel to Kenya, you have to travel to London. So you can't go back to India, get your London visa and then go to London. You get your London visa in Kenya, right? So,
this level of complexity right now is not yet there. So yet to actually figure out all these things. But yeah, now I know whom to actually talk to about all these international airfare matters.
Right. Yeah. Save your legal dollars. If you need anything, please reach out. Lawyers are super expensive. Please save your legal dollars. So
Raghav, do you recommend your O1 visa lawyer?
I would highly recommend her. She's very straightforward. She's a sharpshooter. If you talk to her and she feels you'll get the visa, she'll tell you you'll get your visa. If not, she'll say, sorry, I can't take your case because I'm not confident you'll get your visa and I have a 99% approval rate. So sorry.
Right. So I am a postdoc, and the postdoc types like the J1 handlers are mostly very depressive in nature.
Right.
So I would like to connect with you and ask you for your lawyer's connections, if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Please. In fact, I'll type the name of the firm here. You can go online, look at their website, and if you like them, just reach out to me on my email and with very specific information about you. Oh, sorry, that's my website.
Reflexes.
Yes. So with information about your case, who you are, where you live, what your credentials are, why you feel you're suitable for O1 or whatever other visa you're applying for, and I'll connect you to the lawyer. The reason I say mention it on the email is because the lawyer will only give you a half-hour free call.
Yeah.
Right. After those 30 minutes, she will charge you. So might as well put as much down on the email as possible so she doesn't charge you.
Okay. Thank you.
Right. Yeah. So do this. And answering your question, Vikas, so what are the regulations in place right now? There are no, the regulations have now changed. Now you probably don't have to do the kind of country hopping I was doing. Now I think as long as you have a vaccine that is approved in the US, you have to follow the vaccinated guidelines. And if you have taken a vaccine that is not approved in the US, you have to follow the unvaccinated guidelines. So you're technically unvaccinated in their eyes.
Makes sense. Makes sense now.
So if they say unvaccinated travelers need an RT-PCR within 24 hours, doesn't matter if you have Covaxin or Covishield or whatever other vaccine, you are unvaccinated. Right? So
yeah.
So great. Thank you guys for all your time and for your patience. I hope this was useful to you and good use of your 1 hour. If not, I apologize in advance for wasting some of your time. But I hope it's not the latter. And I'll talk to you soon. Please join the LinkedIn group of MJF so that we can be in touch without sharing numbers. Because it's a logistically nightmare to share your number with everyone. So do that, and let's keep in touch. Thank you so much, and welcome to RCF.
Thank you so much, Raghav.
Yes. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Raghav.
Okay, bye-bye. Good night, I guess. Everyone is leaving. Bye, Sashwat. Bye, Nandita. Bye, Nimi.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Good night. Bye.
Bye, everyone.